You think medieval winters were all cozy hearth fires and fur blankets? Yeah, no. In Dark Age Britain, winter meant watching your neighbours drop dead from starvation while you burned actual shit for warmth because the firewood ran out. Half your village wouldn't make it to spring. The average Anglo-Saxon wasn't worried about which mead to serve at dinner. They were calculating if they should eat the family pig now or watch their kids starve next month. Winter wasn't romantic. It was a 3-month death match against nature, and nature usually won. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. All right, let's head back to Dark Age Britain. But before we go anywhere, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. The first thing that hits you is the cold. Not the kind of cold where you run from your car to your house. I'm talking about bone-deep, can't-escape, might-kill-you cold. Your eyes crack open in the pre-dawn darkness of a tiny Anglo-Saxon house in the depths of winter, somewhere around 650 AD. It's so cold that your breath makes little clouds inside the house. You're lying on a raised wooden platform covered with a thin layer of straw that does almost nothing to soften the hard surface beneath you. There's a rough wool blanket over you, and maybe, if you're lucky, a sheepskin. Around you, the rest of the family is still asleep. Or at least pretending to be. Nobody wants to be the first one up when it's this cold. The fire that was carefully banked last night is now just a pile of faintly glowing embers in the central hearth. Above it, there's a hole in the roof where some of the smoke escapes, but most of it just hangs in the air, making your eyes sting. The walls of your house are made of wattle and daub, basically sticks woven together and covered with mud mixed with straw, dung, and whatever else would hold it together. In summer, this keeps you cool. In winter, it's about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. You can already hear the wind outside. It howls like a wounded animal as it tears through the village. There's a gap under the door where you can actually see snow that's drifted inside during the night. You know you need to get up, but your body is screaming at you to stay under that blanket, inadequate as it is. Fuck that, you think. I'm not moving until I absolutely have to. But you do have to, because in Dark Age Britain, winter doesn't care about your comfort. Winter doesn't care if you're tired or cold or hungry. Winter only cares about one thing, testing whether you deserve to live to see spring. So you force yourself to sit up, wincing as the cold air hits you. Unlike your nice warm bed right now, there's no thermostat to crank up, no electric blanket to switch on. There's just you, the cold, and the knowledge that if you don't get that fire going again soon, things are going to get a whole lot worse. The rest of the family starts stirring too. Your wife, your 3 children who survived infancy, unlike the 2 who didn't, and your elderly father whose cough has been getting worse over the past few days. You try not to think about what that cough might mean. Winter illness in the Dark Ages wasn't just inconvenient, it was often a death sentence. "Get the fire going," your wife mumbles, pulling the blanket tighter around herself and the youngest child. Her voice is rough from sleep and from the smoke that fills the house every day. At 30, she already looks 50, her face lined from years of hard work and insufficient nutrition. You swing your legs over the edge of the sleeping platform and your feet touch the packed earth floor. It's like stepping onto ice. You quickly slip on your shoes, simple leather wrappings that cover your feet and ankles tied with leather thongs. They're better than nothing, but not by much. Now, Getting the fire going isn't as simple as striking a match. Matches don't exist yet. Instead, you reach for your fire kit, a small pouch containing a piece of flint, a steel striker, and some char cloth, linen that's been partially burned to create easily ignitable material. Beside the hearth, there's a small pile of kindling that was prepared the night before, another daily ritual of survival. You kneel by the fire pit, shivering as you work. You place the char cloth on the embers, then blow gently. If you're lucky and the embers are still hot enough, the cloth will catch. If not, you'll need to use the flint and steel, striking them together to create sparks that hopefully catch on the char cloth. It's a skill that takes years to perfect, and even then, it can be frustrating as hell. Today, you're lucky. After a few gentle breaths on the embers, the char cloth begins to glow brighter. You carefully add some of the smallest kindling, dried moss and tiny twigs, and continue to blow softly. The kindling catches and tiny flames appear. You feel a surge of relief. This is the first victory of the day, and it's a crucial one. Gradually, you add larger kindling, then small sticks, building the fire slowly and methodically. This isn't just about getting warm, it's about survival. Without fire, you can't cook food, you can't warm water, you can't dry wet clothing, and in the depths of winter, you will absolutely freeze to death within days. As the flames grow, the room begins to lighten, both from the fire itself and from the faint pre-dawn light now seeping through the single small window, just an opening in the wall covered with a piece of stretched animal bladder. It's not glass, that's for churches and the homes of the very wealthy, but it lets in a bit of light while keeping out some of the wind. Your eldest son, all of 9 years old, gets up to help. He's been doing this since he was 5. In Dark Age Britain, childhood is brief. By 6 or 7, kids are expected to contribute to the household's survival. He grabs a small pot and heads for the door. "Be careful," you tell him. "Don't go far." He nods, knowing the drill. He's going to break the ice on the water barrel outside and bring in water for the morning. It's a simple task, but a dangerous one in the bitter cold. Frostbite can set in quickly, and in this era, there's no real treatment for it beyond amputation, if you're lucky enough to survive the infection that would likely follow. While he's gone, your wife finally gets up, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. She reaches for the food stores, a clay pot containing the remains of yesterday's pottage, a thick stew of whatever vegetables, grains, and occasional meat you have available. She places it near the fire, to warm. Breakfast in Dark Age Britain isn't bacon and eggs. It's whatever you had yesterday, reheated. Food waste isn't a concept that exists when starvation is always just one bad harvest away. Your son returns with the water, his face red from the cold. "It's snowing again," he reports, setting down the pot. His hands are so cold they're white, and he immediately holds them toward the fire. You look out through the door before closing it against the weather. The sky is the deep blue-grey of early morning, and fat snowflakes are indeed falling. Another few inches to add to what's already on the ground. You try to remember how much firewood is left in the storage lean-to attached to the house. 2 weeks' worth? Maybe less if this cold snap continues. "We'll need to collect more wood today," you say, more to yourself than anyone else. It's not a task anyone looks forward to, trudging through snow into the forest, breaking off dead branches. Cutting trees would require permission from the local lord, then dragging them back home. But without it, you die. It's that simple. By now, everyone is up except your father, who's still huddled under his blanket, his cough punctuating the morning sounds. Your 2 middle children, girls of 7 and 5, are helping their mother with the morning meal, their small hands already chapped and red from cold and work. I think we should slaughter the pig today, your wife says quietly, so the children won't hear. The family pig is a valuable asset, but it also requires food to survive the winter. Sometimes the calculation is simple. If feeding the pig through winter will take more food than the pig itself provides, it's time for slaughter. You nod, knowing she's right. After we eat. The morning meal is simple. Reheated pottage served in wooden bowls. It's bland, with only a little salt for flavour. Spices are for the wealthy, and sugar doesn't exist in your world. The hot food helps warm you from the inside, though, and that's what matters. As you eat, you discuss the day's tasks with your wife. Besides collecting wood and slaughtering the pig, there's carding wool to be done, repairs to a section of wall where the daub has cracked, checking on the stored vegetables in the pit outside to make sure they haven't frozen or rotted, and the endless task of simply keeping the fire going. Winter days in Anglo-Saxon England aren't about leisure. They're about working constantly just to maintain the fragile bubble of survival you've created. The conversation is interrupted by your father's coughing, which has become more violent. You exchange a look with your wife. You both know what a cough like that in winter often means. You've seen it before in your youngest brother 2 winters ago, in the neighbour's wife last year. It starts with a cough and ends with a grave dug into the frozen ground, a task almost as difficult as the grief that accompanies it. But there's no time to dwell on what might happen. The day's work won't wait, and the sun, though barely visible through the clouds and the small window, is rising. You finish your food and prepare to face the day. First, though, you need more layers. You pull on a second tunic over the one you slept in. Both are made of rough wool, scratchy against your skin, but crucial for warmth. Over these goes a cloak, fastened at the shoulder with a simple iron brooch. On your legs a woolen hose tied at the knee, and over these you wrap lengths of cloth in a crisscross pattern for extra warmth, an ancient version of leg warmers. Finally, you put on leather gloves, or rather mittens, with only a thumb separate from the fingers. Stay close to the house today, you tell the children. Storm's coming. You can feel it in your bones, this knowledge of weather that develops when your life depends on it. The sky has a certain look, the wind a particular feel that promises serious snow by afternoon. Your wife nods, already organising the indoor work. The eldest will help you with the wood and the pig. The younger 2 will help her with the wool and other tasks. Your father will rest by the fire for all the good it will do him. As you open the door to face the day, the blast of cold nearly takes your breath away. It's the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache and your eyes water, the kind that freezes beards and numbs fingers through gloves. Your son follows you out, his face already set in the stoic expression that people in this time develop early, a face that acknowledges hardship as the default state of existence. The village around you is quiet except for the occasional sound of coughing from nearby houses and the distant crow of a rooster. Smoke rises from the holes in each roof, the only sign that inside these simple structures other families are fighting the same daily battle against winter that you are. You look at your son, already tall for his age, but thin from the perpetual slight malnourishment that affects everyone except the nobility. Wood first, you tell him, then the pig. He nods, and together you head toward the edge of the woods, shoulders hunched against the wind and falling snow. You're barely an hour into the day, and already you're exhausted. But this is winter in Dark Age Britain. This is survival. This is normal. And as you trudge through the snow, you can't help but think about how many winters you've survived already. Not everyone does. Each spring reveals the cost of winter, the fresh graves, the abandoned houses, the hollow-eyed survivors. You wonder, as you do every year, whether this will be the winter that finally takes you or someone you love. But such thoughts don't help with the task at hand, so you push them aside and focus on finding wood dry enough to burn, because in Dark Age Britain, dwelling too long on what might happen is a luxury you can't afford. There's only now, only today, only the next task that keeps death at bay for another few hours. Your breath forms clouds in the frigid air as you and your son enter the forest. The snow is already ankle deep and getting deeper. Another day of winter survival has begun. The snow falls harder as you push deeper into the forest, coating the branches above like a blanket. You've always kinda hated that comparison. Blankets are supposed to be warm, not trying to kill you. Your son works alongside you in silence, his reddened hands snapping dead branches from the lower parts of trees while you tackle the higher ones. "Why can't we just cut down a tree?" he asks, breaking the quiet. "Wouldn't that be easier?" You shake your head. Last man who cut down one of the Theng's trees without permission lost his hand. You hold up your own gloved hand, making a chopping motion. "Not worth it," he nods, understanding. In your world, the local Then, a nobleman who serves the king, owns the woodland. You have rights of pannage, permission to let your pig forage for acorns in autumn, and you can collect dead wood. But cutting down a living tree? That's theft, and theft means punishment. You pile broken branches in the center of a length of rough cloth. When it's full, you tie the corners together to make a bundle that can be dragged through the snow. Your son does the same with a smaller cloth. Your breath plumes in front of you, crystallizing in your beard. The cold is worsening, seeping through your layers, making your toes numb despite the rags wrapped around your feet inside your leather shoes. "That's enough," you say finally, looking at the sky. The clouds have darkened, heavy with snow. Storms coming faster than I thought. You heft your bundle onto your back, wincing at the weight. Your son struggles with his, smaller but still heavy for his frame. Together, you begin the trudge back home, leaving a messy trail through the fresh snow. "Father," your son says after a while, his voice small against the vastness of the winter forest, "will we have enough food to last?" The question hangs in the freezing air between you. It's the question everyone asks themselves every winter, the calculation that never stops running in the back of your mind. "We'll make it," you say with more certainty than you feel. The pig will help, and Woden, willing the Then might distribute some of his stores if things get bad. You don't mention that the Theng only does this when people start dying of hunger, and even then, only sometimes. You don't say that last winter 3 families in your village starved because the Theng decided they hadn't worked hard enough during harvest to deserve his help. You don't tell your son that his question is the one that keeps you awake at night, staring at the smoke-blackened rafters. When you emerge from the forest, the village comes back into view, a collection of small buildings, most similar to your own Wattle and Daub home, with a few larger structures including the Thegns Hall and a small wooden church built by the monks who came through last summer. Smoke rises from every dwelling, wavering in the wind. As you approach your home, your eldest daughter rushes out to meet you. "Grandfather's worse," she says, her face tight with worry. "Mother sent me to look for you." You quicken your pace, ignoring the burning in your shoulders from the wood bundle. When you enter the house, the heat hits you first. Your wife has built up the fire, making the small space almost uncomfortably warm. Then you see your father. He's lying close to the hearth, wrapped in blankets, but he's shivering violently. His cough has a wet sound to it now, and his breathing comes in wheezes. Your wife kneels beside him, pressing a cloth soaked in something to his forehead. "Feverfew and willow bark," she says, seeing your questioning look. "It's all we have." You nod, dropping the wood bundle near the door. Herbs are the only medicine available to most people. Sometimes they help, often they don't. Your wife is known in the village for her knowledge of healing plants, knowledge passed down from her mother and grandmother. It saved lives before. including your youngest daughter's when she had a fever 2 summers ago. But winter illnesses are different, more deadly. With bodies already weakened by cold and less than adequate nutrition, a simple cough can become a death sentence in days. The pig, your wife says quietly. We need to do it now, while there's still light. We'll need the strength from the meat. Your father coughs again, a racking sound that seems to come from deep in his chest. Go, he manages to say between coughs. Don't waste daylight on me. You squeeze his shoulder, already feeling bonier than it did last month, and turn to your son. Let's go. To your wife. Keep him warm. We'll be quick. Outside, the snow continues to fall, already covering your tracks from earlier. You and your son head to the small lean-to shelter attached to the house, where the family pig lives alongside 2 goats and a few chickens. The animals stir as you enter. The smell hits you immediately, a pungent mix of animal waste, hay, and the earthy scent of the creatures themselves. But it's noticeably warmer in here than outside, the body heat of the animals creating a pocket of relative comfort. The pig, a bristly creature with patchy black and pink skin, grunts at your approach. It's not a massive animal by modern standards, maybe 120 pounds at most, but it represents a significant amount of food. You've been fattening it since spring on scraps, foraged acorns, and whatever else it could eat. Turn around if you want, you tell your son. Some children get upset at this part. He shakes his head. I'll help. You nod, respecting his choice. This is part of growing up in your world, understanding where food comes from, participating in every aspect of survival. You reach for the rope hanging on the wall, fashioning a quick snare. The pig, used to human contact, doesn't resist much as you loop it around its snout. Then, with practiced movements, you pull its head back, exposing the throat. Your son holds the body steady. Thanks to you for your life, you murmur, a half-Christian, half-pagan acknowledgement that isn't quite a prayer. Then you draw the knife across the throat in one swift, deep cut. The blood pulses out in a steaming rush, darkening the straw underfoot. You position a wooden bucket to catch as much as possible. Blood is too valuable to waste. It will be mixed with oats and spices to make blood pudding, a calorie-rich food that can help see you through the winter. The pig thrashes briefly, then goes still. Its eyes glaze over as the last of its life drains away. You and your son work in silence for a few moments, ensuring all usable blood is collected. Now the hard part, you say, wiping your knife on a rag. Butchering a pig is neither quick nor easy, especially in the cold, but every part must be used, and used quickly before it can spoil. You hoist the carcass, hanging it from a beam in the lean-to. Your son helps as you begin the process of gutting and skinning. The intestines come first, carefully removed to avoid puncturing them and contaminating the meat. These will be cleaned thoroughly to use as casings for sausages. The stomach and bladder will become containers. The heart, liver, and other organs will be eaten first, as they spoil quickest. You work methodically, your hands red with blood and aching from cold. Your son follows your instructions, holding things steady, helping to separate fat from meat, meat from bone. This isn't his first pig slaughter, but it's the first where he's old enough to be truly helpful. Good work, you tell him as you begin quartering the carcass. Your hands are steady. He straightens a bit at the praise, his breath clouding in the cold air of the lean-to. Will we smoke most of it? You nod. Smoke what we can, salt what we can't. Salt is precious, traded from coastal regions where seawater is evaporated, but essential for food preservation. You've been saving yours for this very purpose. As you work, you hear the door of your house open, and your wife appears, wrapped in her shawl. How is he? You ask, without looking up from your bloody work. Sleeping, she says. The fever's rising. She doesn't need to say more. You all know what that means. She surveys your progress with the pig. I'll get the salt and the smoking herbs ready. With that, she disappears back into the house. You and your son continue the butchering, working faster now as the daylight begins to fade and the snow falls more heavily. The temperature is dropping further and your fingers are stiffening with cold despite the physical labor. By the time you finish cutting the meat into manageable portions, your back aches and your hands are numb. Your son looks exhausted, his face splattered with blood despite his efforts to stay clean. Let's get this inside, you say, gathering the most perishable parts, the organs, some of the blood, and several cuts of meat into a wooden tray. Your son takes another tray with fat and some smaller cuts. The rest you cover with a cloth to be processed tomorrow. When you enter the house, the warmth is a blessing. Your wife has been busy. A large pot simmers over the fire, filled with water and wild herbs for the brining. Several smaller pots contain renderings for different purposes. The children have been put to work too. The younger ones sorting herbs and preparing salt mixtures under their mother's guidance. Your father still lies near the hearth, his breathing laboured even in sleep. You try not to dwell on the pallor of his skin or the way his chest struggles to rise and fall. Put everything here, your wife directs, indicating a clean cloth spread near her work area. The liver, heart and kidneys will cook tonight. The blood needs to be mixed with oats before it congeals. You deposit your trays, then move to wash your hands in a bucket of melted snow water. Your son does the same, the water turning pink with diluted blood. How much salt do we have? You ask. Your wife gestures to a small clay pot. Enough for the most important pieces. The rest will have to smoke heavily. She pauses, looking at the meat. It's a good pig. It will help. The work continues as evening approaches. The liver and other organs are sliced and placed in a pan to cook over the fire. The blood is mixed with oats, herbs, and a tiny amount of precious salt to make blood pudding, which will be stuffed into the cleaned intestines tomorrow. Some of the fat is rendered down for cooking and preserving, while other parts are set aside for making soap and candles. Nothing is wasted. The bones will be used for broth, then carved into needles, pins, and tools. The skin will be scraped and stretched to make parchment or leather. Even the bristles will be collected for brushes. As darkness falls completely outside, the inside of your home becomes a hive of activity. Your eldest daughter tends to her grandfather, changing the herb-soaked cloth on his forehead and helping him drink small sips of water. Your son cleans and sorts the intestines for tomorrow's sausage making. The younger children continue to help your wife with food preparation. The smell of cooking liver fills the small space, making your stomach growl. Despite the circumstances, your father's illness, the harsh winter, the constant worry about food, there's a certain satisfaction in days like this. The pig represents security, at least for a while. Its meat will provide protein and fat that your family desperately needs to survive the cold months. Should we check on the root cellar? Your son asks, looking up from his work. You nod. The root cellar, really just a pit dug into the ground and covered with planks, then insulated with straw, contains what's left of your autumn harvest. Carrots, turnips, onions, and a few precious apples. In the current cold, there's a risk that they might freeze and be ruined. We'll go after we eat, you tell him. The meal, when it's ready, is the best you've had in weeks. Fresh liver, heart and kidneys, seasoned with the few herbs your wife has managed to dry and preserve, along with a portion of yesterday's pottage and a small serving of bread made from barley flour. It's a feast by winter standards. You all eat silently, savouring the rich taste of the fresh meat. Even your father manages a few bites, though he has to pause frequently to cough. After the meal, you and your son bundle up again to check the root cellar. Outside, the snow has accumulated to mid-calf depth and it's still coming down. The sky is completely dark now, but the snow provides a strange half-light that makes it possible to see. You brush the snow off the planks covering the root cellar and lift them carefully. A rush of cold, earthy air greets you. Your son holds a small oil lamp made from rendered fat with a reed wick, its feeble light illuminating the stores below. Some of the turnips are showing frost, he says, pointing. You climb down into the pit, examining the vegetables. He's right. Several turnips at the edge have partially frozen. We'll take these back, you decide, gathering the affected ones. They'll need to be used in the next day or two. You check the rest of the stores, adding more straw insulation where needed. The remaining vegetables look intact, though the quantity is worryingly small for the months of winter still ahead. Back in the house, you find your wife in conversation with a neighbour, Egbert, a man about your age whose wife died in childbirth last winter. He stands awkwardly near the door, a small bundle in his hands. "Heard you slaughtered today," he says by way of greeting. "Brought some honey to trade. My bees produced well before the cold came." Your wife looks at you questioningly. Honey is valuable. A rare sweetness and a preservative too. But trading away meat now means less food later. A small cut, you decide, for the honey. Egbert nods, understanding the caution. Fair. He places the small clay pot of honey on your work table. "How's your father?" he adds, glancing at the old man by the fire. "Fighting," you say simply. Egbert nods again. He doesn't offer empty reassurances. Everyone knows winter illness often ends one way. "The Thegans called a meeting for tomorrow," he says instead. "At midday in the hall, all household heads." This is unexpected news. The Then rarely calls winter meetings unless there's trouble or important business. "Did he say why?" Egbert shakes his head. "Just sent his man around to tell us." He stamps his feet, knocking snow onto your floor. "Sorry, should go before it gets worse out there." You cut a small portion of meat, a bit of shoulder that you can spare, and wrap it in a clean cloth for him. "For the honey," you say, handing it over. After Egbert leaves, your wife raises an eyebrow. "A meeting in this weather? Must be important," you say, though you're not sure what could be so urgent in the dead of winter when most work beyond basic survival comes to a halt. You move to help her with the ongoing meat preservation. The children have been put to bed, all huddled together on the sleeping platform for warmth. Only your father remains awake, his breathing more laboured than before. As you work alongside your wife, cutting meat into strips for smoking, you find your mind drifting to the Thegns meeting tomorrow. The last winter meeting was 3 years ago, when raiders from the north had been spotted nearby. The one before that announced a new tax to be collected in spring. "What do you think he wants?" your wife asks, reading your thoughts. You shrug. "More work, more taxes. It's usually one or the other." She sighs, her hands never stopping their rhythmic cutting. "We've given enough already." You can't argue with that. Between the regular food renders to the Theng, the labour on his lands, and the occasional special taxes, the common folk always seem to be giving more than they can spare. But that's the way of the world. Those with power take from those without. Your father's coughing interrupts your thoughts. It sounds worse, a wet, rattling sound that makes both you and your wife pause in your work. "I'll check on him," she says, wiping her hands on a cloth. You continue cutting meat, trying not to listen to your father's struggling breaths, or your wife's soft, comforting words. There's nothing to be done except make him comfortable and hope. Medicine as you know it is limited to herbs, prayers, and luck. When your wife returns to the table, her expression tells you everything. "It won't be long," she says quietly. His lungs are filling. You nod, feeling a hollow space open inside you. It's not unexpected. Your father is old by the standards of your time, nearly 50. But the loss will still cut deep. And beyond the grief, there's the practical reality. One less pair of hands to help with work. One less person contributing knowledge and skills to the household. "Should I wake the children?" you ask. She considers, then shakes her head. Let them sleep. They can say goodbye in the morning if... She doesn't finish the sentence. You work late into the night, preserving as much of the pig as possible. Some cuts are submerged in brine, others rubbed with salt and herbs. The larger pieces are hung from the rafters, ready to be taken to the smoking shed tomorrow. The intestines are cleaned thoroughly, ready to be stuffed with a blood pudding mixture that sits covered near the fire. Your wife checks on your father periodically. His condition worsens gradually, his breathing becoming more strained, his periods of consciousness briefer. You take turns sitting with him, speaking softly of good memories, assuring him that the family will be cared for. It's well past midnight when you finally finish the most urgent preservation work. Your wife has fallen asleep beside your father, her hand still holding his. You should wake her, get her to come to bed properly, but you don't have the heart to disturb her. Instead, you bank the fire carefully for the night, making sure it will last until morning without needing to be fed. Then you check that the door is securely latched against the wind and any animals that might be desperate enough to try entering a human dwelling. Finally, you climb onto the sleeping platform where your children are huddled together, their small bodies generating a pocket of warmth under the shared blankets. You ease yourself in beside them, trying not to wake them. As you lie there, listening to the wind howl outside and the laboured breathing of your father across the room, you find yourself doing the mental calculations again. How much food is left? How long until spring? Will the then demand part of your newly slaughtered pig as tax? Will your father's illness spread to the children? It's the same worry that gnaws at every parent, every provider, in every home across the village on this winter night. The constant underlying fear that despite all your hard work, all your careful planning, it might not be enough. But for now at least, your family is fed. The fire still burns. The storm rages outside, but you are, for this moment, sheltered from its fury. And sometimes, in Dark Age Britain, that's the best you can hope for. To survive one more day, to push death back just a little further. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. The Thegans meeting, more preservation work, caring for your father if he makes it through the night. But that's tomorrow. For now, you close your eyes, letting the exhaustion of the day pull you towards sleep. As consciousness fades, your last thought is of the pig, the security its meat represents, the weeks of survival it has brought your family. In your world, that's something close to wealth, something close to peace. Morning comes too soon, as it always does in winter. One moment you're asleep, the next your son is shaking your shoulder gently. "Father," he whispers. "Grandfather is gone." You're instantly awake, the familiar weight of grief settling on your chest before you even fully process the words. You slide carefully from the sleeping platform, trying not to wake the younger children. The room is cold. The fire has burned low overnight. Your wife kneels beside your father's body. She's already closed his eyes and positioned his hands across his chest. His face looks peaceful, the pain of his final days erased. "Just before dawn," she says softly as you kneel beside her. "He didn't suffer at the end." You nod, unable to speak for a moment. Your father taught you everything, how to hunt, how to farm, how to survive. Now he's gone, another victim of winter's merciless grip. We'll need to prepare him today, your wife says, practical even in grief. Before the Thegns meeting, death waits for no one in winter. Bodies must be dealt with quickly before they begin to decay, and the frozen ground makes burial challenging. It's a grim task, but a necessary one. I'll get water, your son says, already reaching for the pot. You squeeze your wife's shoulder in silent gratitude for her care of your father, then move to stoke the fire. There's work to be done, as always. Death is just another part of winter's routine. By the time the younger children wake, you and your wife have washed your father's body and dressed him in his best tunic. Threadbare by modern standards, but the finest he owned. Your son has gone to inform the village priest and arrange for burial. Is grandfather with God now? Your youngest daughter asks, her eyes wide as she stares at the still form. Yes, your wife answers, smoothing the child's tangled hair. And with our ancestors too. Like many in your time, your family's faith is a blend of Christianity and older beliefs. A practical spirituality that hedges its bets. Breakfast is meagre, the last of yesterday's bread and a thin gruel made from barley. You need to conserve the pig meat as much as possible. It must last for weeks. While eating, you explain to the children about the Thegns meeting. I'll need to go alone, you tell your wife. You should stay with... You glance at your father's body. She nods. We'll continue with the preservation work and prepare him for burial. Can I come with you? Your eldest son asks. To the meeting? You consider this. Boys his age aren't usually included in such gatherings, but he's nearly a man, and learning how to navigate the social hierarchies of your world is an important skill. Yes, you decide. It's time you saw how these things work. The morning passes in a blur of tasks. You finish preserving more of the pig meat, hanging strips in the smoking shed, a small structure shared by several families where a carefully tended fire burns continuously, the smoke curing meat hung from the rafters. Your wife and daughters stuff intestines with the blood mixture to make black pudding, then hang these to smoke as well. Your son returns with news from the priest. He says we can bury grandfather tomorrow, near the church. This is a mark of respect. Burial in consecrated ground costs extra, usually paid in food or labour. How did you manage that, you ask, knowing your family has little to spare? Your son looks proud. I promised to help repair the church roof in spring. You nod, impressed by his initiative. He's learning the essential skill of negotiation and trade, the complex web of favours and obligations that helps everyone survive. As midday approaches, you and your son prepare to head to the Thegns Hall. You both don your cleanest tunics, still stained and worn but the best you have, and wrap your cloaks tightly against the cold. Be careful, your wife says as you leave. Don't volunteer for anything. It's good advice. In your experience, the Thegns' requests for assistance usually mean more work for already exhausted villagers. The snow has stopped, but the sky remains heavy and grey, promising more to come. The village is quiet as you make your way toward the Thegns Hall, a long wooden building at the centre of the settlement. Unlike your small house, it's built of thick timber planks rather than wattle and daub, with intricate carvings around the doors and along the roof beams. Other men trudge through the snow toward the same destination, household heads from across the village, all looking equally tired and wary. There's Egbert from last night, and old Wulfric, whose joints pain him so badly in winter that he walks with a stick. There's Cerdic, the blacksmith, more fortunate than most with his valuable skills and the constant heat of his forge. Each man nods in greeting, but conversation is minimal. Cold conserves energy by dampening social niceties. "Why do you think he's called us here?" your son asks quietly as you approach the hall. "We'll find out soon enough," you reply, though you share his curiosity. Inside, the Thegan's hall is noticeably warmer than outside, though not as warm as your smaller home. Multiple hearth fires burn down the center of the long room, but the space is so large that much of the heat dissipates before reaching the walls. Still, compared to the bitter cold outside, it feels almost comfortable. The Theng himself sits at the far end on a carved wooden chair raised slightly above the floor. Leofric is a man of around 40, his beard streaked with grey, his face weathered by years of war and weather. By your standards, he's wealthy. His tunic is dyed a deep blue, and a silver arm ring gleams on his wrist, but by the standards of true nobility, he's merely a minor lord, responsible for this small area of land and answerable to greater lords above him. His hall is impressive to you, but would be considered rustic by those higher in the social hierarchy. Still, in your world, he has power of life and death, control over land usage, and the authority to demand labour and goods from those under his protection. As more men file in, benches along the walls fill up. You find a spot about halfway down, your son beside you. The atmosphere is tense. Winter gatherings rarely bring good news. When all are present, the Theng stands. The room falls silent immediately. "Men of Wolfhampton," he begins, using the old name for your settlement. "I've called you here because word has come from the king's messenger." He pauses, letting the significance sink in. Contact with the wider world is rare in winter. "Danes have been sighted along the coast," he continues, his voice grave. "3 ships moving south." A murmur passes through the gathered men. Danish raiders, Vikings, are a persistent threat, though they usually come in summer when seas are calmer and there's more to steal. "Why would they come in winter?" someone asks. "There's nothing to take." The Theng's mouth tightens. "They're not looking to raid and leave. The messenger believes they seek land to settle. They've already burned 2 small settlements north of here." This news sends a chill through the room, colder than the winter air outside. Summer raids are terrifying but brief. The Danes take what they can carry and disappear back to sea. But settlement, that means fighting for territory, for survival itself. "What would you have us do, Lord?" Cerdic the blacksmith asks. "We're no warriors, most of us." The Theng surveys the room, his eyes hard. "We prepare. The King's Fyrd may not come this far west. They'll protect the larger towns first. We may need to defend ourselves. The Fyrd is the King's army, made up largely of free men called to service in times of war. But in the depths of winter, with snow blocking roads and freezing men in their tracks, help might be weeks away, if it comes at all. Starting tomorrow," the Theng continues, "all able men will spend part of each day strengthening our defences. We'll dig ditches where the snow allows, sharpen stakes, repair the old wall around the village core." A groan ripples through the assembly. It's not resistance. No one wants to be defenceless against Danish axes, but the prospect of additional labour when everyone is already struggling just to survive the winter is daunting. "My lord," old Wulfric speaks up, his voice quavering, "many of us can barely gather enough wood to keep our families from freezing. How can we? Would you prefer to keep warm while the Danes burn your house around you?" The Then cuts him off sharply. "They won't wait for spring, and neither can we." No one argues further. The threat is real, and despite the hardship, defence must take priority. "Each household will send 1 man each day starting tomorrow," the Theng decrees. "We'll work in shifts. Cerdic," he turns to the blacksmith, "you'll repair what weapons we have and forge more as materials allow." The blacksmith nods grimly. "Iron is scarce, but he'll do what he can." The rest of you take inventory of anything that could serve as a weapon. Hunting spears, wood-cutting axes, knives. Those with bows, check your strings and arrows. You glance at your son, seeing both fear and excitement in his young face. Like most boys his age, he's heard heroic tales of battle against the Danes. The reality, would be far less glorious. One more thing, the Thegn adds. Ration your food stores even more carefully. If we must defend the village, we'll need strength. And if the worst happens and we must flee, he doesn't finish the thought. No one wants to contemplate abandoning homes and fields, becoming refugees in the dead of winter. Questions? The Thegn asks, though his tone suggests he's not particularly interested in hearing any. One man near the front raises his hand hesitantly. "My lord, my wife gave birth just 3 days ago. She needs me to find another in your household to take your place," the Thegn interrupts, "or work at night while she sleeps. Everyone contributes." His eyes scan the room. "Anyone else?" The silence is answer enough. "Go then. Begin preparations. I'll expect the first workers at dawn tomorrow." As you file out of the hall with the others, the mood is somber. The threat of Danish raiders was always present in summer, but winter was supposed to be a reprieve from that particular danger, if not from others. "Father," your son says quietly as you trudge back through the snow, "will they really come here?" You consider lying to him, offering false reassurance. But in your world, comforting lies can be deadly. Children need to understand the dangers to survive them. "I don't know," you answer honestly, "but we must be ready if they do." When you return home, the smell of cooking greets you. Your wife has prepared a small portion of the fresh pig liver, carefully rationed to make it last longer. She looks up as you enter, reading your expression. "Bad news?" she asks, already knowing the answer. You explain about the Danish ships while your son goes to check on his sisters, who are still working on preserving meat. Your wife's face pales slightly at the news, but she remains calm. Like all women of your time, she's accustomed to hardship and danger. "What does it mean for us? Now, I'll need to help with defenses starting tomorrow," you tell her, "and we should hide some of our food stores, just in case." She nods, understanding the unspoken concern. If raiders come, visible food supplies will be the first things taken. Some must be concealed to give your family a chance if the worst happens. "Your father?" you ask, noticing his body has been moved. "The priest came while you were gone. They've taken him to the church. The ground's too frozen for digging today, but they'll manage it tomorrow." She hesitates. "I gave them some of the pig fat for their help." It's a significant offering, but a necessary one. In your community, everyone negotiates such exchanges constantly. Goods for services, help for future consideration. The complex web of obligations helps everyone survive. You sit at the table, suddenly exhausted despite the day being only half over. The news from the Thegns' hall weighs heavily, compounded by your father's death and the constant struggle against winter itself. Your wife places a small wooden bowl in front of you, containing a portion of liver and onions cooked in pig fat. It's a meagre serving by modern standards, but in your world, it's a feast, rich in calories and nutrients that your body craves. "Eat," she says simply. "We'll need our strength." While you eat, your eldest daughter joins you at the table. At 7, she's already serious and observant, with a wisdom beyond her years. "Is grandfather really with God?" she asks suddenly. You glance at your wife, then back to your daughter. "Yes," you say, "and with our ancestors too, in the halls beyond." "But the priest says the old gods aren't real," she persists, her brow furrowed. "He says there's only the Christ God." This is a common tension in your time, the newer Christian faith pushing against older pagan beliefs that still hold strong in many hearts. Most families, like yours, practice a practical blend of both, hedging their spiritual bets. The priest believes what he believes, your wife says carefully, and we honor that, but our family has known the old ways for generations. There is wisdom in both paths. Your daughter seems satisfied with this answer, at least for now. In truth, most people in your village maintain similar spiritual flexibility, attending Christian services while still observing the old festivals and customs. The distant bishops might disapprove, but here in the borderlands, pragmatism trumps doctrinal purity. After eating, you check on the meat preservation process. Your children have done well in your absence. The black puddings are smoking nicely, more meat has been salted, and fat has been rendered for storage. It's skilled work that even the youngest can contribute to, each according to their ability. "Will we need to fight the Danes, father?" your eldest daughter asks as she carefully turns strips of meat hanging from the rafters. "Let's hope not," you tell her, "but we prepare as if we will." The rest of the day passes in continued work. Despite your father's death, despite the threat on the horizon, the immediate tasks of survival can't be postponed. Winter allows no mourning period, no time for fear or hesitation. You reinforce the livestock shelter, packing extra straw against the walls to keep in warmth. The remaining animals, 2 goats and a few chickens, represent a significant portion of your family's wealth and future food supply. Losing them to cold would be devastating. Your son helps you check your meager weapons, a wood-cutting axe, a hunting spear with a fire-hardened wooden tip, and the knife you use for everything from butchering to woodworking. None would stand against a Danish warrior's steel, but they're better than bare hands. Your wife and daughters continue food preservation, working methodically to ensure nothing is wasted. The oldest goes to the stream to break ice for fresh water, carrying the heavy bucket back with arms that have grown strong through necessity. As afternoon wears on, neighbours begin to stop by, ostensibly to offer condolences for your father, but really to exchange information about the Danish threat. Each visitor brings a small token, a handful of dried herbs, a few turnips, a length of twine, and leaves with news and perhaps a tiny portion of fresh meat. These exchanges strengthen community bonds that might mean the difference between life and death in the weeks ahead. "Heard the Thegins sending men to watch the old Roman road," Egbert says, as he presents a small jar of honey, a generous gift that speaks to his concern for your family after your father's passing. "In case they come by land rather than river." You nod, accepting both the information and the honey with equal gratitude. Makes sense. Snow might slow them, but not stop them if they're determined. Throughout these conversations, you notice your son listening intently, absorbing the adult concerns that will soon enough be his responsibility too. Childhood in your world is brief. By 12 or 13, he'll be expected to shoulder a man's burdens fully. As evening approaches, you help your wife prepare the main meal of the day, a pottage of barley, turnips, and small pieces of precious salt pork seasoned with the few dried herbs that remain from summer. The pot simmers over the fire, filling the small house with a savoury aroma that makes stomachs growl in anticipation. While it cooks, you gather the family to discuss plans for tomorrow. "I'll go to help with the defences after your grandfather's burial," you tell them. "The rest of you will need to continue the preservation work and tend to the animals. I can check the fish traps at the stream," your son offers. In winter, fish move slowly in the cold water, sometimes making them easier to catch in woven basket traps, if you can break through the ice to place them. Your wife nods approval. "The girls and I will finish the sausages and check the smoking shed." Even the youngest children have assigned tasks, gathering kindling near the house, feeding the chickens, carding wool for future spinning. In your world, idle hands are a luxury no one can afford, especially in winter. The meal, when it's ready, is eaten in near silence, each person focused on the rare satisfaction of a full stomach. You're careful to keep portions reasonable. The food must last. But today, with the fresh pig meat, you can afford to be a little more generous than usual. After eating, as darkness falls completely outside, your family gathers close to the fire. This is the only true leisure time in your day, a brief period when the immediate tasks of survival are done and sleep has not yet claimed you. "Tell us a story, Father," your youngest asks, her eyes already heavy with coming sleep. Stories are important in your world. They entertain, but they also teach and preserve knowledge. Without books or writing, skills reserved for monks and the rare noble who bothers to learn, oral tradition is how wisdom passes through generations. Which one would you like, you ask, though you already know the answer. "The one about King Alfred and the cakes," she says predictably. It's her favourite, the tale of a king who, fleeing Danish invaders, a detail that feels uncomfortably relevant now, took shelter with a peasant woman who, not recognising him, set him to watch her baking. Distracted by his troubles, the king let the cakes burn and was scolded soundly by the woman when she returned. You begin the familiar tale, embellishing here and there as all good storytellers do. The children listen raptly, even though they've heard it many times before. Your wife works on mending a tunic as she listens, her fingers moving steadily by firelight. The story, with its lesson about how even kings must pay attention to small duties, resonates in your world where negligence of any kind can have fatal consequences. It also offers hope. Alfred eventually rallied his forces and drove back the Danes, preserving his kingdom. Perhaps your village might be similarly fortunate. As you finish the tale, you notice your youngest has fallen asleep against her mother's side, her face peaceful in the firelight. The others are fighting yawns, their bodies demanding rest after the day's exertions. "Time for sleep," your wife says, gathering the sleeping child in her arms. Tomorrow comes early. The family moves to the sleeping platform, arranging themselves as they do every night, children in the middle for warmth, parents on the outside as both protection and first defense against the cold. Extra blankets and furs are pulled up, bodies press close together, and breath begins to slow. Before banking the fire for the night, you take a moment to look around the small house, at the meat hanging from rafters, the preserved food in clay pots, the few precious tools and possessions accumulated over a lifetime. It's humble by any standard, but it represents security, the thin margin between survival and disaster. Tomorrow brings your father's burial, work on village defences, and the continued daily battle against winter itself, and somewhere beyond the horizon, Danish ships might be approaching, carrying men with steel and hunger for land. But for now, in this moment, your family is fed and warm. The fire still burns, and sometimes in Dark Age Britain, that's victory enough for one day. You carefully bank the fire, preserving embers for morning, then join your family on the sleeping platform. As you settle in, your son shifts slightly to make room. "Father," he whispers, "do you think we'll survive if the Danes come?" In the darkness, you consider your answer carefully. "We've survived everything else," you tell him finally. "Winter, hunger, sickness. We'll survive this too, God and ancestors willing." Whether you believe these words fully or not doesn't matter. In Dark Age Britain, hope itself is a survival tool, as essential as fire and food. You've learned to cultivate it carefully, like a precious crop that must not fail. Your son seems satisfied with this answer. His breathing soon deepens into sleep, joining the gentle rhythm of the rest of the family. You lie awake a while longer, listening to the wind outside, planning tomorrow's tasks, calculating food stores and defense strategies. Eventually, exhaustion claims you too, pulling you down into darkness where, for a few hours at least, the constant struggle for survival can be forgotten. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, but tomorrow is not yet here. Dawn brings a rare, clear sky, the rising sun painting the snow-covered village in hues of pink and gold. The beauty is striking against the harsh reality of your life, a moment of colour in a world that's mostly grey and white during winter. Your family rises in silence, the normal morning chatter subdued by the day's first task, your father's burial. Death in winter is common enough that there's an established routine. The graves are dug as deep as possible in the frozen ground, which isn't very deep at all. Bodies are interred quickly, with minimal ceremony. The grieving happens in stolen moments between the continuing work of survival. "Will we need to bring anything?" your eldest daughter asks as she helps prepare the morning meal. Thin gruel again, with a small piece of bread for each person. "Just ourselves," your wife answers. "The priest will handle the rest." Breakfast is eaten hurriedly. You all dress in your cleanest clothes, still patched and worn, but the best you have. Your family walks together through the village toward the small wooden church, its cross standing stark against the morning sky. Several neighbours join you along the way, falling in beside your family without saying much. Words of condolence are few. Everyone understands that death in winter is simply part of the natural order, but their presence is support enough, a reminder that in this harsh world, community is essential for survival. The priest, Father Ethelred, a thin man with work-roughened hands that belie his scholarly calling, waits at the churchyard. Behind him you can see your father's body, wrapped now in a simple shroud, lying beside a shallow hole in the ground. The grave isn't deep, the priest says, apologetically. The ground fights us. You nod, understanding. It's not disrespect, but practicality. In frozen earth, every inch of depth requires exhausting labour with picks and iron bars to break the soil. The service is brief, a few Latin prayers that most of the gathered villagers don't understand, followed by simpler words in your own tongue about resurrection and eternal life. Your son, standing tall beside you, whispers his own prayer in the old language, words to guide his grandfather's soul to the halls of your ancestors. You don't correct him. The Christ God may rule the heavens now, but the old ways still have power, especially in matters of death. When it's time, you and your son step forward to lower your father's body into the grave. The shroud-wrapped form is lighter than you expected. Winter illness had taken much of him before death claimed the rest. You arrange him carefully, then step back as men begin to shovel the frozen soil over him. The sound of earth hitting the shroud is sharp in the cold air. Your youngest daughter begins to cry quietly, and your wife pulls her close. Your eldest stands straight and solemn, already learning the stoicism that winter demands. As the grave is filled, people begin to drift away, back to their homes, their work, their own struggles for survival. There's no feast of remembrance, no extended mourning period. Winter allows no such luxuries. The priest approaches your family as the last of the earth is tamped down. "May God keep his soul," he says simply. Then, more practically, "Will you join the defense work today?" You nod. "As soon as we're done here." Good. The Theng has men gathering at the north edge. They say that's the most likely approach if they come by land. His expression is grim. Like everyone else, he understands what Danish raiders would mean for the village. After a final moment at the grave, you turn to your family. I'll go to the defense work now, you tell them. The rest of you should continue with the meat preservation and check the traps. Your wife nods. We'll manage. To your son, check the fish traps first. If the stream isn't completely frozen, we might have something. You leave them at the edge of the churchyard, watching as they head back toward home while you turn north. The village is already stirring with activity, smoke rising from houses, people moving with purpose despite the cold. Everyone has heard about the Danish threat by now, and the normal winter lethargy has been replaced by nervous energy. At the north edge of the village, where fields would be planted come spring, a group of men has already gathered. The Thegn is there, dressed more practically now in heavy wool and fur, directing the work. Beside him stands his Huskarl, a professional warrior who serves as his bodyguard and enforcer. Unlike the villagers with their farming tools repurposed as weapons, the Huskarl wears a mail shirt and carries a proper sword at his hip. Ah, Leofwine, the Thegn greets you, remembering your name despite your relative unimportance in his world. Good, we need strong backs today. He points to where men are attempting to dig a ditch across the most likely approach path to the village. The ground is frozen solid, requiring back-breaking work with picks to break it up before shovels can be used. We'll deepen the ditch where we can, the Thegn explains, and set sharpened stakes on the village side. It won't stop a determined force, but it might slow them enough for our archers to make a difference. You take up a pick and join the line of men attacking the frozen earth. The work is brutally hard. The pick bounces off the ground as often as it bites in, sending jarring shocks up your arms. Sweat forms despite the cold, then freezes uncomfortably against your skin. As you work, you listen to the conversations around you. Information is a valuable currency in your world, especially now. My cousin in the next village says they've already seen Danish scouts, one man says between grunts of effort. 2 men on horseback watching from the hills. That close? Already? Another responds, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. I heard they landed 3 days' journey north. Danes move fast, even in winter. A third man joins in, especially if they're hungry. You keep swinging your pick, saying little. Rumours and speculation won't dig this ditch or protect your family. Only work will do that. After an hour, the Thegn calls for a brief rest. Men lean on their tools, breathing hard, clouds of vapour forming with each exhale. A servant brings around a skin of weak ale, not enough to intoxicate, but the calories and liquid are welcome after such exertion. When it reaches you, you take a careful sip, then pass it along. The Thegn uses this moment to address the gathered men. We've had word from a messenger, he announces. The king has ordered the Fyrd assembled, but they'll concentrate on defending the larger settlements first. Help may come, but we should prepare as if it won't. This isn't surprising news, but it's disheartening nonetheless. The king's army might eventually drive the Danes back, but individual villages like yours could be destroyed in the meantime. What chance do we have, my lord? Someone asks bluntly. If they come in force? The Then's face hardens. We have walls, ditches, and determined men. We have homes and families to protect. Sometimes that's enough. His tone suggests the discussion is closed. The work resumes, men attacking the frozen ground with renewed urgency. By midday, you've helped dig a respectable section of ditch. Not deep, but better than nothing. Your arms ache and your back screams with pain, but there's a grim satisfaction in seeing progress. When the sun reaches its zenith, a pale disk barely visible through thin clouds, the then divides the workers into shifts. Half will continue with the ditch, while others begin sharpening stakes and reinforcing the simple palisade wall that surrounds the village core. You're assigned to stake making, which is somewhat easier on your already exhausted body. Using a small hand axe, you shape one end of branches and small logs into points, creating simple but effective spikes that will be set into the ditch facing outward. As you work, your thoughts drift to your family. Is your son having any luck with the fish traps? Are the younger children staying warm enough? Is your wife managing the many tasks that would normally be shared between you? Winter survival is difficult enough without the added burden of defense preparations and grief. Around mid-afternoon, you see a familiar figure approaching, your son carrying something wrapped in cloth. Your heart lifts at the sight of him, then tenses with concern. He shouldn't be here unless something's wrong. He reaches you, slightly out of breath from hurrying through the snow. "Father," he greets you, then nods respectfully to the thane nearby. "Mother sent food." He unwraps the cloth to reveal a small portion of bread and salted pork, a generous offering given your limited supplies. You accept it gratefully, breaking off half to share with your son. "The traps?" you ask between bites. His face brightens. "2 fish, not big but fresh." This is excellent news. Fresh protein in winter is a precious resource, especially with your food stores already stretched thin. You feel a surge of pride in your son's growing competence. "And home? Everyone well?" He nods. "The smoking is almost done. Mother says the meat should last well into spring if we're careful." He hesitates, then adds more quietly, "There's a man in the village asking questions. A stranger." Your chewing slows. "What kind of man? What questions?" "He came on horseback, wearing a cloak with fur trim. In your world, such finery indicates wealth or status. He asked about our defences, how many fighting men we have. Said he was from the king." You exchange a glance with the man working beside you, who has overheard. Without a word, he sets down his axe and moves toward the thane, conveying the information. The thane approaches quickly, his housecarl at his side. "A stranger asking about our strength?" he asks your son directly. "When? What did he look like?" Your son describes the man again. Middle-aged, well-dressed, speaking your language but with an unfamiliar accent. "He rode towards the east path when he left," he adds. "About an hour ago." The Thegan's face darkens. "No messenger from the king would ask such things without coming to me first." He turns to his housecarl. "Take 2 men and follow. Don't engage. Just see where he goes." The warrior nods and strides away, selecting men as he goes. The thane looks back at your son. "You did well to bring this news." Then to you, "He has good instincts. He'll make a fine housecarl someday." It's high praise, though the prospect of your son becoming a professional warrior isn't necessarily appealing. Such men live violent lives, often short ones, but you nod acceptance of the compliment nonetheless. "Go home now," you tell your son. "Tell your mother what's happened. Keep everyone close to the house until I return." He nods seriously, understanding the potential danger. With a quick farewell, he heads back through the snow toward home, moving with the boundless energy of youth. The work continues with increased urgency, the news of a suspicious stranger adding fuel to fears that Danish raiders might be closer than thought. The ditch deepens slightly, more stakes are sharpened, and the palisade wall is reinforced where winter weather has damaged it. As the afternoon wears on, the temperature drops further. Your sweat-dampened clothes begin to freeze, making movement uncomfortable. Your hands, despite woolen mittens, grow numb with cold. But you persist, as does everyone. The alternative, being unprepared if raiders come, is unthinkable. We'll finish for today. the Thegn announces finally as daylight begins to fade. Same time tomorrow. Bring any weapons you have to be checked by Surdic. Men gather their tools, their movements slow with exhaustion. Before you can leave, the Thegn approaches you directly. Your son, he says without preamble. How old? 9 summers, you answer, wondering at his interest. He nods thoughtfully. Old enough to serve as a runner if needed, quick feet, sharp eyes, useful if we need to send messages between defense points. Your instinct is to refuse, to keep your son as far from danger as possible, but in your world everyone serves according to their ability in times of crisis, and running messages would keep him away from actual fighting. If needed, you agree reluctantly. The Thegn nods again, satisfied. Go home, rest. We continue tomorrow. The walk back to your house seems longer than usual, your body protesting each step after the day's labour. The village is quieter than normal for this time of evening, people staying close to home, preparing for a threat that may or may not materialise. When you reach your door, warmth and cooking smells greet you. Your family looks up from their tasks, relief evident on their faces. They've been worried, though none would admit it. Any news? Your wife asks as she helps you remove your frozen outer garments. You explain about the suspicious stranger and the Huskarl sent to follow him. Could be nothing, you add, though you don't really believe it. Could be a scout. She nods, absorbing this with the practical stoicism of a woman who has weathered many crises. We've almost finished the preservation, she says, changing the subject to more immediate concerns. And the fish made a good soup. Your eldest daughter brings you a bowl of said soup, thin but nourishing, with flakes of precious fish and what looks like a few turnips floating in it. The warm liquid is heaven to your cold, stiffened body. As you eat, your son tells you more about his day. How he had to break thick ice at the stream to check the traps, how one had been disturbed by an otter that left tracks in the snow, how he reset them in slightly different spots that might yield better results tomorrow. Your younger children chime in with their own reports. Kindling gathered, chickens fed, wool carded for future spinning. Even in the shadow of threat, the daily work of survival continues. After eating, you check the meat preservation progress. Most of the pig has now been processed, smoked, salted, or made into sausages and puddings. It represents weeks of meals carefully rationed. The thought of raiders taking it, or worse, burning it with your house, is almost physically painful. Should we hide some? Your wife asks quietly, reading your thoughts. Bury it in the snow away from the house? It's a good suggestion. Tomorrow, you decide, we'll dig a cache in the woods. This is an old survival strategy, creating hidden food stores in case the main supply is lost. Your father taught you the technique, as his father taught him. In uncertain times, such ancient knowledge becomes more valuable than ever. Your family settles into evening activities, mending clothes, carving a replacement handle for a broken tool, twisting plant fibers into cord for 100 useful purposes. Your wife begins spinning wool using a simple drop spindle, the repetitive motion almost hypnotic in the firelight. Your youngest child approaches you hesitantly. Father, will the bad men come and burn our house? The question hangs in the air, giving voice to the fear everyone feels but has avoided mentioning directly. You pull her onto your lap, feeling how small she still is, how vulnerable. We're preparing to keep them away, you answer carefully. The Thegn and all the men of the village are working to protect our homes. But if they come, your wife interrupts gently. We have a plan. Remember the hiding place in the woods we showed you last summer? The old badger den under the fallen oak? The child nods solemnly. That's where we'll go if we need to, your wife continues. We'll take food and blankets and stay safe until the danger passes. This contingency plan has existed for years, a response to the ever-present possibility of raiders, fire, or other disasters. Even the youngest children know the location and are taught how to reach it from any point in the village. The conversation shifts to lighter topics after that. Your son recounting a story he heard from another boy about a fox stealing chickens from the Theng's own coop. Your daughters discussing patterns they might weave when spring brings the opportunity for dyeing new wool. The evening passes in this way, ordinary activities providing a comforting rhythm despite the extraordinary circumstances brewing beyond your walls. This ability to maintain normalcy in the face of threat is perhaps the most essential survival skill your people possess. As night deepens, preparations for sleep begin. The fire is banked carefully, precious possessions are stowed away, and the family arranges themselves on the sleeping platform as always. But tonight there's a new element to the routine. Your hunting spear and axe are placed within easy reach, and the door is not only latched but barricaded with a heavy piece of wood. Sleep comes fitfully, your mind cycling through worries and plans, the suspicious stranger, the inadequate defenses, your family's safety, the countless tasks still needed for basic survival, all compete for attention in the darkness. Sometime in the deepest part of night you're awakened by a sound, a distant horn blast quickly cut short. You sit up, instantly alert, listening intently. Beside you, your wife is also awake, her body tense. "What was it?" she whispers. "I don't know," you reply honestly. "Could be the watch." The Thegan had mentioned setting night watches at the village boundaries, but a horn signal suggests something more urgent than routine vigilance. You rise quietly, trying not to wake the children, and move to the small window. Pushing aside the covering, you peer into the darkness. At first, you see nothing unusual, just the familiar shapes of nearby buildings dimly visible in the faint moonlight reflecting off snow. But then, toward the north where you worked on defences earlier, a flicker of movement catches your eye, too distant to identify, just shadows moving against shadows. You're debating whether to investigate when another sound reaches you, the village alarm bell, normally used to announce meetings or celebrations, now ringing with urgent purpose. Its clanging shatters the night silence, instantly waking everyone in your house and likely the entire settlement. "Get up," you tell your family, already reaching for your warmest clothes. "Quickly now." Your wife is immediately in motion, helping the younger children dress while gathering essential items, a small bag of food, a water skin, the fire-starting kit, a precious knife. Your son grabs his own cloak and reaches for the smaller hunting spear. "What's happening?" your eldest daughter asks, her voice steady despite the fear visible on her face. "I don't know yet," you answer truthfully, "but we prepare for the worst and hope for better." Outside, voices can be heard now, men shouting, the Theng's deeper tones carrying over the din. The bell continues its frantic pealing. "Stay here," you tell your family. "Bar the door behind me. I'll return when I know more." Your wife nods, her face a mask of controlled fear. "Be careful," is all she says. The cold hits you like a physical blow as you step outside. The night air burns your lungs as you move quickly toward the commotion at the village edge. Other men emerge from houses along the way, some barely dressed against the cold, all carrying whatever weapons they possess. At the northern edge where you worked earlier, a crowd has gathered. Torches illuminate the scene in flickering orange light, casting long shadows across the snow. The Then stands with his huskarl, both fully armed now, addressing the assembled villagers. "Spotted! Approaching from the north," the Thegn is saying as you join the group. "At least 20 men on foot, moving fast through the forest." Danes? Someone asks, the word carrying all the terror that generations of coastal raids have embedded in your people. Who else travels armed at night in winter? The Huskarl responds grimly. They've found our weak point and seek to exploit it before we're fully prepared. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Fear, anger, resignation. 20 armed raiders against a village of farmers and craftsmen is not a fair fight, even with the partial defences you've managed to construct. What do we do, my lord? Cerdic the blacksmith asks, voicing the question on everyone's mind. The Thegan's face is hard in the torchlight. We fight, we protect our homes, our families, our food stores. We make them pay so dearly for each step that they decide easier targets lie elsewhere. It's a brave speech, but you note he doesn't promise victory. In your world, honesty about dire situations is valued over false hope. Those with bows take positions along the wall, the Theng continues, issuing rapid orders. The rest form groups of 5 at each approach path. Women, children, and elders should gather in the church and my hall. Stone and heavy timber will provide better protection than wattle and daub if they break through. Men begin organising themselves according to these instructions, moving with the grim efficiency of those who understand their lives depend on it. You find yourself grouped with 4 others at the northeastern approach to the village, Egbert among them, carrying a woodcutting axe similar to your own. Never thought I'd die fighting Danes in the dead of winter, he mutters as you take positions behind the meagre barricade. Always figured it would be hunger or fever that got me. You don't respond, your attention fixed on the dark forest edge beyond the cleared area around the village. The torches behind you destroy your night vision, making it difficult to see into the darkness. But somewhere out there, men are approaching with destruction in mind. A thought of your family sends a stab of worry through you. They should be heading to the Theng's Hall for safety, but will they know to go? Did word reach them after you left? I need to make sure my family knows to seek shelter, you tell the men around you. Egbert nods, understanding. Go, be quick. You sprint back through the village, passing women and children already moving toward the hall and church with bundles of possessions. The organised response is impressive. This is not the first time your settlement has faced danger, and established protocols are being followed. When you reach your house, you find your wife already preparing the family to leave. Essential items are bundled in cloths, the youngest child wrapped in an extra blanket, the fire safely extinguished. We heard the instructions, your wife tells you. The Thegan's man came through. Relief washes over you. Good. Go to the hall. Stay together. To your son. Help your mother. Protect your sisters. He nods solemnly, standing straighter with the responsibility. At 9, he's already learning that manhood in your world often comes too early, forced by crisis. And you? Your wife asks, though she knows the answer. I'm assigned to the northeast barricade, you tell her, with Egbert and the others. She nods, accepting this reality without protest. In your world, defending home and family is simply what men do when threats arise. Her role, equally vital, is ensuring the children's survival no matter what happens. May God and the ancestors protect you, she says simply, touching your face in a rare public display of affection. And you respond, committing her features to memory in case it's the last time you see them. Your children gather around for brief farewells, the youngest clinging tightly until your wife gently pulls her away, the eldest trying to be brave but with tears threatening, your son with the forced stoicism of a boy trying to be a man before his time. Go now, you tell them, forcing strength into your voice. Stay together. Do as your mother says. You watch them join the stream of villagers heading toward the hall, your wife carrying the youngest while herding the others. Only when they disappear from sight do you turn back toward your defensive position, hurrying through the now emptying village. Back at the barricade, the situation has developed. Scouts report the approaching force has split into smaller groups, apparently planning to probe multiple points along the village perimeter. They're testing for weakness, the Huskarl explains as he moves between positions, checking readiness. Stay alert. Don't chase if they retreat. It may be a trap to draw defenders away from other points. You take your place beside Egbert again, gripping your axe tightly. The waiting is almost worse than fighting. The strain of anticipation, the playing out of terrible possibilities in your mind, the cold seeping into your bones as you stand motionless. Then, from the darkness beyond the torchlight, a sound reaches you, the crunch of footsteps on snow, multiple sets, approaching slowly. Shadows move among the trees, still indistinct but definitely human. They come, Egbert whispers unnecessarily, his knuckles white around his axe handle. You swallow hard, forcing down fear. You've never fought in battle before, few farmers have, but you've butchered animals and defended against wolves. You understand the mechanics of violence, if not its application against other men. The figures emerge from the tree line, moving cautiously into the cleared area before the ditch you helped dig. In the dim light you can make out perhaps 5 men, heavily bundled against the cold but clearly armed. Their breath clouds around their heads as they assess the village defences. One points toward your position, speaking in a language you don't understand but recognize as Danish. Another responds. Then the group begins moving deliberately toward your barricade, not rushing but with clear purpose. Steady, the man to your right murmurs. Let them reach the ditch first. You wait, heart pounding, as the raiders approach. They're close enough now to see details: bearded faces, fur-trimmed clothing, spears and axes not unlike your own, but clearly made for war rather than work. The lead raider reaches the ditch, pausing to consider this obstacle. He says something to his companions, a note of derision in his voice. Clearly your day's labour hasn't impressed him much. What happens next occurs with startling speed. An arrow whizzes from somewhere behind you, one of the village archers on the wall, and strikes the lead Dane in the shoulder. He staggers back with a shout of pain and surprise. Instantly, the night erupts into chaos. The raiders charge forward, leaping the shallow ditch with ease. Your defensive line rises to meet them, farm tools raised against war weapons. The crash of metal on metal, wood on wood, fills the air. A Dane rushes toward you, spear extended. You swing your axe desperately, knocking the spear point aside. He recovers quickly, jabbing again. This time you're not quite fast enough. The spear tip slices your upper arm, pain blooming hot and immediate. Pure instinct takes over. You swing your axe in a wide arc, feeling it connect solidly. The Dane grunts, stumbling back. You press forward, swinging again and again, no longer thinking, just reacting. Around you, similar struggles unfold. Egbert grapples with a raider, both men having lost their weapons in the scuffle. Another villager lies motionless in the snow, while a Dane clutches a wound in his side, trying to retreat. The fight is chaotic, lacking the organisation of professional warfare. Farmers against raiders, both sides hampered by cold and darkness, fighting for survival rather than glory. You find yourself face to face with another Dane, this one wielding a sword, a weapon far superior to your simple axe. He swings with practiced skill, forcing you back step by step. Your boot catches on something, a fallen comrade or enemy you can't tell, and you stumble. The Dane sees his advantage and lunges. You raise your axe in desperate defense, knowing it won't be enough, but before the sword can fall, an arrow sprouts suddenly from the raider's neck. He drops to his knees, then face forward into the snow. You scramble up, nodding thanks toward the unseen archer who saved your life. The skirmish continues around you, but something has changed. The raider's initial confidence seems shaken by unexpected resistance. Several are already retreating toward the tree line, dragging wounded companions. "They're pulling back," someone shouts. "Stand firm." Indeed, the remaining raiders begin disengaging, moving back across the ditch toward the forest. They call to each other in their foreign tongue, regrouping rather than fleeing outright. "They'll try elsewhere," the Huskarl says, appearing suddenly beside your group. "This was just testing our strength. The main force is still out there." Even as he speaks, shouts erupt from the western side of the village. Another probe, another skirmish. The night will be long, with raiders seeking any weakness in the defences. You take stock of your own position. 2 of your group of 5 are wounded, yourself included, though your arm injury seems relatively minor, and 1 sits dazed from a blow to the head. Only Egbert and the 5th man appear unharmed. "Bind that," Egbert tells you, gesturing to your bleeding arm. "We'll need everyone capable for the next attack." You tear a strip from your tunic to wrap the wound, wincing as you pull the makeshift bandage tight. The cut burns, but the cold has numbed it somewhat, and the bleeding seems to be slowing already. Around you, other defenders tend similar injuries or drag the more seriously wounded toward the center of the village where women with healing knowledge wait to assist. You don't see any dead among your people yet, but the night is young and the raiders haven't committed their full strength. As you secure your bandage, a boy appears. Not your son, but one about the same age, serving as a runner for the Thengen. "All men who can still fight are to fall back to the inner palisade," he announces breathlessly. "The Theng says to abandon the outer positions and concentrate our strength. It's a wise decision. With raiders probing multiple points, your limited numbers are spread too thin. Better to defend a smaller perimeter effectively than try to hold everything with insufficient force." You help the man with the head injury to his feet, and together your group begins withdrawing toward the center of the village, where a low wooden palisade surrounds the most important buildings: the Thegan's Hall, the church, the grain storage. As you move, you scan anxiously for any sign of your family. They should be safe in the hall, but in such chaos, nothing is certain. The thought of your children exposed to danger sends fresh energy through your tired limbs. Behind you, torches are being extinguished at the outer defensive positions. No point marking them for raiders now that they're abandoned. The village descends into deeper darkness, lit only by a few carefully placed torches along the inner palisade. You take up a new position along this final defensive line, joining a more concentrated force of villagers. Here, women have joined the defense too, those without small children or with particular skill in archery or spear work. In crisis, your society discards normal divisions of labor. Everyone who can fight does. The Theng moves among the defenders, offering encouragement and adjusting positions. When he reaches your section, he pauses, noting your bandaged arm. "Oh, still able to swing that axe?" he asks directly. You nod, testing your grip. The wound throbs but doesn't prevent function. "I can fight." "Good. We'll need every able body before dawn." He moves on, continuing his rounds. From beyond the palisade, shouts and occasional clashes indicate the raiders are encountering the now empty outer defences. Soon they'll realize the defenders have withdrawn and press toward the village centre. What happens if they break through? Someone nearby asks nervously. We retreat to the hall and church, Egbert answers. Stone and heavy timber, we can hold there longer. And if they break through those too? Egbert has no answer for this. Everyone knows what happens when raiders take a settlement. Death for many, especially those who resist, and slavery for those deemed valuable enough to take. You think of your family sheltered in the hall, of your children facing such a fate, and grip your axe tighter. The pain in your arm recedes, replaced by cold determination. If raiders reach the hall, they'll have to go through you first. Time passes in tense waiting. The sounds of movement beyond the palisade grow closer, then recede, then closer again. The raiders are studying your defenses, looking for weaknesses, perhaps waiting for more of their companions to join them. The cold deepens as the night progresses, making it difficult to stay alert. Men stamp their feet and blow on numbed hands, trying to maintain circulation without making too much noise. No one speaks above a whisper now. Sound carries far in the winter night, and any advantage of surprise is precious. You find yourself thinking of your father, buried just that morning, now missing this latest crisis. Perhaps it's better this way. He died peacefully, if painfully, rather than facing raiders' blades. And yet part of you wishes for his steady presence, his lifetime of wisdom, accumulated through previous threats and hardships. A sudden cry from the western side of the palisade snaps you from these thoughts. They come, many of them. All along the defensive line, men and women brace themselves, raising weapons. You peer into the darkness, trying to see the approaching threat. For a moment, there's nothing, just the vast blackness beyond the torchlight. Then they appear, not at one point, but all along the perimeter. Dozens of figures charging from the darkness, far more than the initial probing force. This is the main attack, the full strength of the raiders brought to bear against your final defensive line. The night erupts into chaos once more, shouting, the clash of weapons, screams of pain and defiance. Arrows fly from both sides, some finding human targets, others disappearing harmlessly into darkness. A section of raiders reaches your position, charging the palisade with shields raised. The first wave attempts to climb over, while others attack the wooden barrier itself with axes. You strike at hands, gripping the top of the palisade, hearing a cry of pain as your axe connects. Beside you, Egbert thrusts a spear between the wooden stakes, driving back another attacker. But there are many of them, and they're organized, professional. A portion of the palisade near you begins to crack under concentrated axe blows. If it falls, raiders will pour through the gap. "Brace it," someone shouts. Several defenders rush to push against the weakening section from the inside, while others continue to strike at raiders attempting to climb over. You're caught between these tasks, uncertain where you're most needed, when a familiar voice cuts through the din. "Father." Your blood freezes. Turning, you see your son running towards you across the open space between the palisade and the hall. He carries something in his arms, bundles of spears, you realize, being distributed to defenders. "Get back," you shout, terror gripping your heart at the sight of him so close to danger. He either doesn't hear or ignores you, continuing his dash toward the defensive line. Just as he nears your position, a section of the palisade gives way with a splintering crash. Raiders immediately begin pouring through the gap. Time seems to slow. You see your son's eyes widen in shock as Danes burst through the barrier. You see raiders register his presence. A small figure, vulnerable, directly in their path. You see a spear raise, aim. You move without conscious thought, abandoning your position, sprinting toward your son. A Dane steps into your path. Your axe swings in a desperate arc, connecting with terrible force. The man falls. You leap over him, still running. Down, you scream at your son. Miraculously, he obeys. dropping flat to the ground as the thrown spear whistles through the space where he stood. You reach him, grabbing his tunic, dragging him up and behind you as you turn to face the raiders now streaming through the broken palisade. Other defenders converge on the breach, fighting desperately to contain it, but more gaps are appearing as the raiders concentrate their attacks. "Run!" you tell your son, pushing him toward the hall. "Now!" This time he obeys, scrambling away as you face the approaching Danes. You know you can't stop them alone, but perhaps you can buy seconds for your son to reach safety. A raider charges you, sword raised. You parry with your axe, the impact sending shock waves up your injured arm. Another appears at his side, then another. You're forced back step by step, fighting defensively now, just trying to survive. Around you, the defense is collapsing. The palisade has been breached in multiple places, and raiders are flooding into the village center. Defenders retreat toward the hall and church in small groups, still fighting but clearly overwhelmed. An arrow strikes the Dane nearest you, giving you a moment's respite. You use it to disengage, turning to run toward the hall where your family shelters. Your arm bleeds freely now, the bandage torn away in combat. Your breath comes in ragged gasps, visible in the cold air. As you run, you see other villagers making similar desperate dashes for the final refuges. Some don't make it, cut down by pursuing raiders. Others reach the heavy doors of hall or church, pulled inside by those already sheltering there. You sprint the final distance to the Thegan's hall, where a defender recognizes you and pulls you through the doorway. The massive wooden door slams shut behind you, immediately reinforced by heavy bars across its width. Inside, the hall is packed with villagers, women, children, the elderly, and now the retreating defenders. Your eyes search frantically for your family, finding them huddled near the central hearth where a fire provides meager warmth and light. Your son sees you first, breaking away to run to you. "Father." The relief in his voice matches what you feel seeing him safe. The rest of your family follows, your wife, your daughters, all unharmed. "You shouldn't have been out there," you tell your son, torn between anger at his risk-taking and overwhelming relief that he's alive. "The Thegan said to bring weapons to the defenders," he explains, his voice small but defiant. "I was helping." Before you can respond, the Thegan himself appears, his face grim and splattered with blood. Whether his own or someone else's, you can't tell. "They've surrounded both buildings," he announces to the crowded hall. "They're trying to burn us out." A collective gasp goes up from the assembled villagers. Fire is the greatest fear. Even stone and heavy timber will eventually yield to flames, and those inside would face the choice of burning or facing raiders' weapons. "What do we do?" someone asks, panic evident in their voice. The Thegan's expression hardens. "We hold as long as we can. The smoke will be visible for miles. Perhaps help will come." He doesn't sound convinced of this himself. Outside, you can hear raiders calling to each other in their foreign tongue. The sounds of axes striking wood suggest they're gathering fuel for fires. Through small window openings, the smell of smoke already reaches you. You hold your family close, trying to project a confidence you don't feel. Winter in Dark Age Britain has always been a struggle for survival, against cold, against hunger, against disease. But now, as smoke begins to seep under the door and through tiny gaps in the hall's construction, you face its most immediate threat: violence. The night is far from over, and whether you and your family will live to see the dawn remains very much in question. Smoke curls through the air inside the Thegns hall, stinging eyes and scratching throats. Children whimper softly, mothers hush them with urgent whispers. The sounds of the raiders outside continue, wood being stacked, axes chopping, foreign voices calling to each other in the darkness. Your family huddles together near the central hearth where the fire offers meagre warmth and light. Your arm throbs where the Danish spear cut you, but the bleeding has slowed, bound now with a clean cloth your wife had in her bundle of essentials. The wound seems minor compared to what others have suffered. Several men lie on makeshift pallets, their injuries far worse than yours. "What will happen to us?" your eldest daughter whispers, her eyes wide with fear, but her voice surprisingly steady. "We wait," you tell her simply. "We find out what they want." Your son, sitting close against your uninjured side, looks up. "They want our food and our people." He's right, of course. Raiders come for supplies and slaves, young, strong workers who can be sold in distant markets or put to work on Danish farms. Your son is old enough to understand this reality and brave enough to face it directly. The Theng moves through the crowded hall, speaking quietly with his huskarl and other village elders. Their expressions are grim. Whatever plan they're discussing doesn't inspire confidence. More smoke seeps in under the door and through tiny gaps in the timber walls. Outside, the crackle of flames becomes audible. They've started fires against the hall's exterior. The building won't burn quickly. Its heavy oak timbers are resistant to fire, but eventually the heat and smoke will force you out. Your wife shifts closer, her shoulder against yours. "We could try to reach the hiding place," she murmurs, "when they break in the confusion." It's a desperate plan. The hidden spot in the woods, the old badger den enlarged over generations as an emergency shelter, might offer temporary safety if you could reach it unnoticed. But getting there through raiders and winter darkness with 3 children would be nearly impossible. Before you can respond, a new sound cuts through the tense atmosphere. A horn blast, long and clear, coming from somewhere beyond the village, then another, answered by a third. The raiders' voices outside change tone, alarm replacing confidence. The sounds of fighting resume, but now they come from the village edges rather than directly outside the hall. The Then strides to the centre of the room, raising his voice to be heard over the growing commotion. "The third. The king's men have come." A ripple of hope passes through the crowded villagers. The Anglo-Saxon Third, the king's army of free men called to service, was supposed to be days away, focused on defending larger settlements. Their unexpected arrival feels like a miracle. "Stay inside," the Thane commands as some men move toward the barred door. "Let them clear the raiders first." The sounds of battle outside intensify. Shouts, the clash of weapons, the thunder of hooves as mounted warriors join the fray. The smoke continues to seep in, but no new fires seem to be lit against the hall's walls. Your youngest daughter coughs, her small body shaking with the effort. Your wife wraps her more tightly in a blanket and holds her close, covering her mouth and nose to filter the smoky air. Minutes stretch like hours as you wait, listening to the battle gradually move away from the hall and through the village. The raiders are being pushed back, retreating before a superior force. Finally, a pounding comes at the door. "Open in the king's name!" The Then nods to his men, who cautiously remove the heavy bars. The door swings open, admitting a gust of frigid air that momentarily clears the smoke. A warrior stands framed in the doorway, mail-clad, sword-bloodied, his shield bearing the king's device. "The village is secured," he announces. "The Danish dogs flee into the forest." A ragged cheer rises from the assembled villagers, relief overwhelming exhaustion and fear. People begin to filter outside, desperate for fresh air despite the cold. You help your family rise, supporting your wife as she carries your youngest. Together, you join the stream of people exiting the smoky hall into the winter night. Outside, the scene is one of controlled chaos. King's warriors, properly armed and armored fighting men, move efficiently through the village, securing areas and tending to their own wounded. Among them are faces you recognize, men from neighboring settlements who have answered the fired call. The raiders are indeed gone, leaving behind their dead and some wounded too badly injured to retreat. These sit or lie under guard, their futures uncertain but undoubtedly grim. Your family stands huddled together, breath clouding in the cold air, uncertain what to do next. Dawn is still hours away and the night temperature continues to drop. The hall is too smoke-filled to return to immediately, and your own home's safety is unknown. A king's thane approaches your village's lord, clasping arms in greeting. "We rode as soon as we heard," he says. "A shepherd boy saw their approach and ran to bring word. We were already gathered at Wolfhare's estate, preparing to march east." "Your timing was perfect," your thane responds, genuine gratitude in his voice. "Another hour and they'd have smoked us out." The king's thane nods grimly. They've been hitting small settlements all along the northern border. This is the farthest south they've come. He surveys the village. "Your people fought well. The raiders didn't expect such resistance from farmers." This small praise brings a measure of pride. Your community did stand against professionals, holding long enough for help to arrive. Not a victory exactly, but not a complete defeat either. The immediate crisis past, attention turns to the wounded and to securing the village against any possible return of raiders. The king's men will remain until dawn at least, setting proper watches and helping repair what defences they can in the darkness. Your family, like others, must find shelter for what remains of the night. The Thegn's Hall will need hours to clear of smoke, and the church is already overcrowded with wounded. "We should check our house," your son suggests. "See if it's still standing." It's a reasonable suggestion. The raiders focused their attention on the hall and church where people had gathered, likely leaving outlying homes relatively untouched. With the king's men now patrolling moving through the village should be safe enough. "Stay together," you tell your family as you begin the walk home. The village looks different in the aftermath of battle. Torches illuminate bodies lying in snow turned muddy by many feet, broken weapons, damaged structures. The pristine white landscape of morning is now scarred and sullied, marking the violent intrusion into your winter world. As you approach your home, relief washes over you. It appears intact, no signs of burning or forced entry. Inside, it's exactly as you left it hours earlier, though bitterly cold with the fire long extinguished. Your wife immediately moves to relight it, using the precious fire kit to ignite kindling prepared before the alarm sounded. Your eldest daughter helps her younger siblings remove snow-dampened outer garments while you check the house's security, door, window coverings, the small storage area where your remaining food is kept. Everything seems untouched, you report, returning to the main room where the fire is catching, small flames beginning to push back the darkness. "We were lucky," your wife says quietly, feeding the growing fire with careful precision. Enough fuel to generate needed warmth, but not wasteful. Even after facing raiders, the winter's greater threat of fuel scarcity remains foremost in her mind. As the house slowly warms, your family settles into a semblance of normal routine. Your wife heats water to clean your wound properly. Your children unroll sleeping blankets near the fire. The familiar actions are comforting after the chaos of battle and flight. A knock at the door brings instant tension, the memory of danger still too fresh. You approach cautiously, axe in hand. "Who's there?" "Osric, the Thegn's man," comes the reply. "Checking all households." You open the door to find a young man from the village, one of the Theng's household servants now acting as messenger. The Theng asks all to gather at the hall at first light, he says. The king's men bring news we should all hear. You thank him for the message, and he continues to the next house, trudging through snow now trampled and blood-spattered. What news do you think they bring? Your son asks, once the door is closed and barred again. Whether the raiders have truly gone, you speculate, whether more might come. These are the practical concerns uppermost in everyone's mind after such an attack. Your family eventually settles for sleep, though rest comes fitfully after the night's events. You take turns keeping watch. An unnecessary precaution with King's warriors patrolling outside, but the habit of vigilance isn't easily abandoned. Morning arrives with grey light filtering through the window covering. Your home has never felt more precious than it does now. A small shelter, humble by any standard, but yours and still standing when it might easily have been burned. Your family prepares for the day in subdued fashion. The normal morning routine, rekindling the fire, preparing simple food, dressing, takes on new significance after nearly losing everything. Each ordinary action becomes a small victory, a statement of continuity and survival. Breakfast is meagre, a bit of barley porridge, water rather than ale to drink, but no one complains. Food stores must be carefully rationed, especially now when the normal winter scarcity might be compounded by damage from the raid. After eating, you make your way together to the Thegan's Hall. The village looks different in daylight, damage more visible but somehow less threatening than it appeared in torchlight. Several houses show fire damage, and the palisade is breached in multiple places. Bodies have been collected. Villagers laid respectfully aside for burial. Raiders dumped unceremoniously in a pile beyond the settlement edge. The hall itself has been cleared of smoke overnight, its massive doors standing open to admit fresh air despite the cold. Inside, villagers gather on benches while the Then and King's men occupy the high seats at the far end. Your family finds space together, your youngest child on your wife's lap, the others pressed close on either side. When most villagers have assembled, the Thengan rises. First, he begins, let us honour those who fell defending our homes. He reads names, 5 men and 1 woman from your community who died in the fighting. The list is shorter than it might have been without the timely arrival of the third, but each name represents a devastating loss to families already struggling to survive winter. Their sacrifice protected us all, the Theng concludes. They will be buried with honour when the ground can be properly prepared. In winter, this means bodies must be kept frozen until a proper grave can be dug, a grim necessity in a season that makes even routine burial difficult. The King's Then steps forward next, a broad-shouldered man named Wulfgar, whose mail shirt and sword mark him as a professional warrior rather than a farmer temporarily called to service. The Danish raiders have withdrawn north, he announces. We pursued them through the night and killed many. The survivors reached their ships and have put to sea. A murmur of relief passes through the gathered villagers. The immediate threat, at least, has passed. However, Wulfgar continues, raising a hand for silence. Their attack on your settlement marks a new strategy. Previously, they've raided only in summer and targeted coastal areas. This winter campaign against inland villages suggests they seek more than simple plunder. They want land. This news brings a different kind of fear. Summer raids, while terrifying, are temporary. The Danes take what they can carry and disappear across the sea, but settlement means permanent displacement, a contest for territory itself. The king has ordered increased patrols along all northern approaches, Wulfgar assures the anxious crowd. My men and I will remain in this area for several days, and other thirds are being raised to protect neighbouring regions. It's welcome news, but everyone understands the limits of such protection. The king's resources are stretched thin, especially in winter when travel is difficult and supplying warriors becomes challenging. Eventually, most communities must rely on their own defences. "What of our food stores?" someone asks from the crowd. "We've barely enough to last until spring as it is." It's the question foremost in many minds. Winter survival depends on careful management of autumn's harvest, and any disruption to those stores could be catastrophic. The Theng answers this concern. "I've had men check the storage areas. Some food was taken by the raiders, but most remains intact." Additionally, he gestures to Wulfgar, the king's men bring supplies. This unexpected news generates genuine excitement. Extra food in midwinter is a precious gift, especially after the strain of recent events. Salt pork, grain, and dried fish, Wulfgar confirms. Not much, but enough to replace what was lost and provide some margin against hardship. The meeting continues with practical matters, organising repairs to damaged structures, redistributing resources to those whose homes were burned, arranging proper burial for the dead when conditions allow. Throughout, there's a sense of community solidarity strengthened by shared danger and survival. When the formal gathering ends, people break into smaller groups, sharing experiences of the raid and offering mutual support. Your family remains together, listening to neighbours' stories while waiting to hear what work assignments will be given for the day. The Thegan approaches your group directly. "Leofwine," he addresses you. "Your arm, how bad?" You flex the injured limb carefully. Your wife cleaned and rebandaged the wound properly this morning, and while painful, it doesn't appear to be serious. "I can work," you assure him. He nods, satisfied. "Good. We need men to repair the western section of Palisade first. It's the most damaged and the most exposed." It's sensible to prioritise defences, even though the immediate danger has passed. No one believes this will be the last raid, whether it comes in the remaining winter months or with the spring thaw. "I'll join the work party," you agree. To your son, "You stay with your mother and sisters today, help at home." He looks disappointed but doesn't argue. After his adventure during the raid, delivering weapons to defenders and nearly being killed for his efforts, he's perhaps understood the difference between heroic imagination and dangerous reality. The day unfolds in a blur of necessary work. While you join other able-bodied men in repairing defensive structures, your wife and children return home to continue the interrupted process of winter survival, preserving the remaining pig meat, checking stored vegetables for frost damage, keeping the fire maintained at optimal efficiency. The king's men assist with repairs, their trained strength and martial skills surprisingly adaptable to peacetime construction. They work alongside villagers, sharing techniques learned from fortifying other settlements against similar threats. During a brief midday break, Wulfgar himself joins your work group, accepting a modest portion of bread and salt pork with thanks. He's curious about your community, asking questions about local resources, typical weather patterns, and defensive capabilities. "Your village fought well," he comments between bites. "Better than some larger settlements with more men." "We had little choice," you respond simply. "Everything we have was behind us." He nods, understanding. That's often the difference. Men defending their homes fight harder than those who can flee. He studies the palisade repairs. "These stakes, they're set at an outward angle?" "Yes," you explain. "Makes them harder to climb over. An old technique my father taught me." "Your father was a warrior." You shake your head. "A farmer. But he remembered the raids from his youth. Some lessons stay with you." Wulfgar seems impressed by this practical wisdom passed through generations. It's a reminder that while professional warriors like him possess formal training, farming communities hold their own kind of knowledge, survival skills honed through centuries of hardship and threat. Work continues until fading light makes it impractical. The palisade repairs aren't complete but have progressed enough to provide basic security. The remaining tasks will continue tomorrow. You return home weary, your injured arm throbbing from the day's labour. The house is welcomingly warm after the bitter cold outside. The smell of cooking food, a simple pottage of barley and vegetables with a small amount of precious pork filling the small space. Your family greets you eagerly, each with news of their day. Your wife has traded some of her preserved herbs for 2 extra candles from a neighbour whose home was damaged in the raid and who now stays with relatives. Your eldest daughter helped organise food distribution from the king's supplies, ensuring every household received a fair share. Even the youngest children contributed, gathering scattered firewood within the village boundaries, helping card wool for future spinning. This ordinary domestic scene, family sharing their day's activities around the fire, feels extraordinarily precious after nearly losing everything. The simple fact of being together in your own home, with food cooking and the fire burning, transcends the humble reality of your existence. After eating, your son helps rebandage your wound, his small fingers surprisingly gentle as he applies the herbal poultice your wife prepared. "Does it hurt much?" he asks, genuine concern in his voice. "It's healing," you tell him, which isn't quite an answer but satisfies him nonetheless. Evening deepens around your family's quiet activities. Your wife spins wool using a simple drop spindle, the repetitive motion almost hypnotic in the firelight. Your daughter sort dried herbs into small bundles for storage. Your son practices knot tying, a useful skill for everything from fishing to construction. There's little talk of the raid now, as if speaking of danger might somehow invite its return. Instead, conversation turns to tomorrow's tasks, to spring planting plans, to stories and small domestic concerns. It's a deliberate focusing on future and normalcy, a psychological strategy as important to survival as physical preparation. A knock at the door interrupts this peaceful scene. Again, there's a moment of tension before you call out, "Who's there?" "Egbert," comes the familiar voice of your neighbour. With news, you open the door to admit him, noting the fresh bandage around his head, a wound from the fighting that you hadn't noticed earlier. He stamps snow from his boots and moves gratefully toward the fire. "The king's men are setting watches through the night," he informs you after accepting a cup of warm water, a simple but welcome offering in the winter cold. 4 men at each village approach, 2 of theirs and 2 of ours. It's reassuring to know proper vigilance will be maintained, though few expect the raiders to return so soon after being driven off. Still, winter nights are long and dark, with many hours for fear to grow if left unfed by facts. They're asking for volunteers from each household, Egbert continues. 2-hour shifts through the night. You nod, unsurprised. Even with the king's men present, the village must contribute to its own defence. "Which watch do they want me for?" "Middle night," Egbert replies. "From when the moon reaches its height until 2 hours after." He glances at your bandaged arm. "If you're able, I'm able," you confirm. The wound is painful but not debilitating, and watch duty requires vigilance more than physical strength. After Egbert leaves, your wife looks at you with concern. "You should rest that arm. It's only standing watch," you reassure her. "Better than rebuilding palisades." She doesn't argue further, knowing the necessity of contributing to community defence. Instead, she suggests, "Sleep now then, I'll wake you when it's time." It's sensible advice. You settle onto the sleeping platform, your body grateful for the chance to rest, despite your mind's continued alertness. The events of the past day swirl through your thoughts. The burial of your father, the Thegans meeting, the raid, the desperate defense, the timely rescue. So much condensed into a single winter day and night. Sleep comes despite these active thoughts, your body's exhaustion overriding mental stimulation. Your last conscious awareness is of your family moving quietly around the house, their presence a comfort that follows you into dreams. Your wife wakes you what seems like moments later, though the fire's reduced state suggests hours have passed. "It's time," she says softly, helping you rise without disturbing the children now asleep on the platform. Outside, the night is clear and bitterly cold, stars brilliant in the black sky. The moon hangs high, illuminating the snow-covered village with pale light that creates sharp shadows behind every structure. You make your way to the north approach, the direction from which the raiders originally came. There you find one of the king's warriors already standing watch, his mail shirt gleaming dully in the moonlight. Beside him is Wulfric, the old man with bad joints who nevertheless has volunteered despite his age and infirmity. "I'll relieve you," you tell Wulfric, who nods gratefully and begins his slow journey back to warmth and rest. The king's warrior, a young man named Edric, you learn, acknowledges you with a nod. "Quiet night," he reports. "Nothing moving out there but foxes and the occasional owl." You take position beside him, scanning the forest edge beyond the village boundary. The repaired palisade looks stark in the moonlight, the new wood lighter than the weathered sections, like a scar on the village's protective skin. "Your first raid?" Edric asks, after a period of companionable silence. "First time fighting men," you confirm. "We've had wolves before, and once a bear that came too close to the livestock." He nods, understanding. "Different, isn't it? Beasts want food or territory. Men want everything." It's an astute observation from one so young, suggesting experience beyond his years. You wonder about his story, how a youth comes to be a professional warrior rather than a farmer or craftsman. But don't ask. In your world, such paths are often determined by necessity rather than choice. The watch passes slowly, marked by periodic circuits around the village perimeter and stamping of feet to maintain circulation in the intense cold. Conversation is minimal, partly to conserve warmth, partly to maintain listening awareness of the surrounding darkness. Your mind drifts to your family, sleeping safely in your intact home. How different this night might have been without the timely arrival of the Ferd. Would you have escaped with them to the forest hiding place? Would you have been taken as slaves? Would you have died fighting at the hall's threshold? The possibilities are too grim to dwell upon, yet too real to dismiss entirely. Near the end of your watch, a sound from the forest edge brings instant alertness. You and Edric both tense, hands moving to weapons. A moment later, a deer steps delicately from the tree line, its breath clouding in the moonlight as it pauses to test the air. The sight of the animal brings a complex mix of emotions: relief that it's not a returning raider, hunger at the thought of fresh meat in winter, appreciation for the graceful creature's survival in harsh conditions. Before either of you can decide whether to attempt a kill, the deer detects your presence and bounds away, disappearing into the darkness. "Good sign," Edric comments. "Deer wouldn't come close if raiders were about." It's folk wisdom rather than military strategy, but contains truth nonetheless. Animals often sense human presence, especially groups of armed men, well before humans detect each other. When your replacement arrives, another villager accompanied by a different king's man, you feel both relief at returning to warmth and a curious reluctance to abandon your protective role. The responsibility of watchstanding, of guarding sleeping family families creates its own kind of purpose and pride. You trudge back through the silent village, noting how peaceful it appears under moonlight and fresh snow. The damage from the raid is softened by darkness and winter's blanket, broken sections, hidden, blood-stained snow covered by fresh powder, the harsh reality temporarily veiled. At home, you enter quietly, careful not to wake your sleeping family. The fire has burned low but not out, providing just enough light to navigate the small space. You add a few small pieces of wood, coaxing the flames back to provide minimum necessary warmth without wasteful burning. Your wife stirs as you join her and the children on the sleeping platform, shifting to make space while remaining mostly asleep. The children don't wake at all, their breathing deep and regular in the fire-warmed air. Lying there in the quiet darkness, surrounded by your family, you feel a profound gratitude that transcends the difficult realities of your existence. Winter in Dark Age Britain remains brutal. Cold, hunger, and threat are constant companions. But tonight, in this moment, you have warmth, food, and safety. Your family is whole. Your home stands. The community has survived. It's enough. More than enough. Sleep reclaims you as the fire settles into steady burning, its light creating dancing shadows on the walls of your small home. Outside, the winter night continues its slow journey toward dawn, the stars wheeling overhead, the bitter cold intensifying as the darkest hours arrive. But inside, wrapped in shared warmth and the simple security of survival, you rest. Tomorrow will bring more work, defense repairs, food management, the constant battle against winter itself. The Danish threat hasn't disappeared entirely, merely withdrawn temporarily. Spring remains distant, with many harsh weeks between now and its arrival. But tonight's sleep comes easily, untroubled by immediate fear, and in Dark Age Britain such peaceful rest is perhaps the truest measure of success, a small victory against the season that kills more surely than any human enemy. The days following the raid settle into a new rhythm, different from the normal winter routine, but with its own pattern of necessity. King's men remain in the village, their presence both reassuring and slightly disruptive. They require feeding from already stretched stores, though they contribute their own supplies to offset this burden. The morning after your night watch, you wake to find your arm stiff and painful, the wound slightly warm to the touch. Your wife examines it with a frown, her experienced eyes recognizing early signs of possible infection. "We need to clean it again," she says, already reaching for her bundle of medicinal herbs, "and I'll make a different poultice." You submit to her ministrations without complaint, knowing that even minor wounds can become deadly if infection takes hold. She washes the cut thoroughly with water heated over the fire, then applies a mixture of herbs ground into a paste. Some you recognize as having been traded from travelers who brought them from distant regions. The sharp, clean scent cuts through the normal smoky air of your home. "Keep it dry today," she instructs as she rewraps the bandage. "No heavy work if you can avoid it." It's sensible advice, though difficult to follow when there's so much repair work needed. Still, you promise to be careful. In your world, an infected wound that progresses to blood poisoning is essentially a death sentence. No surgeries or antibiotics exist to save you. Prevention is the only medicine that truly works. Outside, the village is already active despite the early hour. The King's men have organised work parties more efficiently than the Thern alone could manage, their military experience translating well to civilian emergency response. Groups focus on specific tasks: palisade repairs, house reconstruction for those whose homes were damaged, clearing and burying the dead raiders beyond the village boundary. You're assigned to a food inventory team, lighter work that accommodates your injured arm. Together with several other villagers, you check each household's remaining stores, combining this information into a comprehensive understanding of the community's food situation. It's delicate work, requiring tact and honesty in equal measure. No one wants to reveal exactly how much they have, yet everyone understands the necessity of accurate information for winter survival. The news is both better and worse than expected. Several grain storage areas were damaged or plundered during the raid, but the village's main food caches, cleverly concealed by generations of habit, remained untouched. Combined with the supplies brought by the king's men, there should be enough to last until spring, assuming careful rationing and no further disruptions. By midday, you've completed the inventory and reported to the Thegn and Wulfgar, who consult together over the information. Their conversation is low but intense, discussing contingencies and distribution plans that might become necessary as winter deepens. Your arm needs rest, the Thegn observes, noting how you hold it carefully against your body. Go home. We have enough hands today. It's an unexpected kindness from a man not known for softness. Perhaps the shared experience of defending the village has created a new understanding between lord and commoner, or perhaps he simply recognizes the practical value of allowing injuries to heal properly rather than worsening through overuse. Either way, you accept the dismissal with thanks and make your way home through the busy village. Children run past, seemingly recovered from the terror of the raid, now incorporated into their games. Saxons and Danes has replaced the usual wolves and villagers in their play. The resilience of the young is both surprising and heartening. At home, you find your wife and daughters working on a new project, processing the wool shorn from sheep before winter began. It's been washed and dried months ago, but now they card it carefully, aligning the fibers in preparation for spinning. The repetitive motion of the wooden cards, paddle-like tools with fine metal teeth, creates a rhythmic scraping sound that fills the small house. Father, your youngest exclaims when you enter, "Are you hurt worse?" "No," you assure her, sitting near the fire, "just sent home to rest it properly." To your wife, "Where's our son?" "With Cerdic at the forge," she answers. "The blacksmith needed help with the bellows while he repairs weapons." It's good experience for a boy his age, learning a valuable craft while contributing to community needs. The blacksmith, always an important figure in village life, becomes even more central after a raid when tools doubling as weapons need repair and repurposing. You settle into the domestic scene, helping where you can with your good arm, holding wool for carding, adjusting the fire, preparing vegetables for the evening meal. There's comfort in these ordinary tasks after the extraordinary events of recent days. As you work, your eldest daughter mentions something that had been forgotten in the chaos. Tomorrow is Modra Night. The reminder brings a moment of stillness. Modra Night, Mother's Night, marks the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. In your community's complex spiritual blend of old ways and newer Christian teachings, it remains an important observance, honoring both female ancestors and the fertility that will eventually bring spring's rebirth. "I'd lost track of the days," your wife admits, "with everything that's happened." "The priest mentioned it this morning," your daughter explains. "He said there will be prayers at the church, but also," she hesitates, glancing at her mother, "but also the old observances at the sacred oak," your wife finishes, naming the ancient tree at the village edge, where traditions predating Christianity are still honoured, particularly by the women of the community. The dual celebration is typical of your time and place, the official Christian observance alongside older practices that remain meaningful despite the Church's occasional disapproval. Most families participate in both, hedging spiritual bets while honouring traditions that have sustained community for generations. We should prepare something, you suggest, even with everything else happening. Your wife nods agreement. A small offering, at least. We have much to be grateful for. Our home still stands. Our family survived. The mention of survival brings your father to mind, buried just days ago, his passing now almost overshadowed by the raid's drama. Had he lived just a few days longer, he would have seen the Danish attack he'd warned about since your childhood, drawing on his own youth's experiences. Perhaps it was better he didn't. The afternoon passes in quiet productivity, the injured arm forcing you to slow your normal pace. Your son returns before dusk, excited to share his day's experiences at the forge. "Cerdic let me hammer a spearhead," he announces, miming the action. "He says I have a good eye for the metal's colour when it's ready." You listen to his enthusiastic recounting, recognizing the value of such knowledge. Blacksmithing is a rare and precious skill, offering security beyond what farming alone can provide. If your son shows aptitude and interest, it could be a path worth encouraging. As darkness falls early, winter days being painfully short at this latitude, your family gathers for the evening meal. The food is simple but adequate. Barley pottage enriched with a small portion of salt pork and wild onions, plus a treat of honey drizzled on a piece of bread for each person. A small luxury in preparation for tomorrow's solstice observance. After eating, you check your wound again. The herbal poultice seems to be working. The angry redness has faded somewhat, and the pain has dulled to a manageable ache. Your wife prepares a fresh application before the family settles around the fire for the evening's quiet activities. Talk turns to preparations for Modronite. In better years, there would be special foods, perhaps even a slaughtered goat or sheep dedicated to the celebration. This year, with resources stretched thin by winter and raid recovery, observances will be more symbolic than feast-centered. "We still have the small jar of mead," your wife reminds you, referring to the fermented honey drink saved from autumn for special occasions. Enough for each to have a sip in remembrance. Your daughters discuss what they might bring to the sacred oak as offerings, traditionally small handcrafted items or food morsels dedicated to female ancestors and the forces of fertility. Your youngest daughter has been working on a simple doll made from scraps of cloth, which she now retrieves from her sleeping area to show. "It's for grandmother," she explains solemnly, referring to your mother who died years ago when this child was just an infant, "so she can watch over us like grandfather does now." The innocent blending of Christian afterlife concepts with older ancestor worship is typical of your time. Theological distinctions matter less to ordinary people than the comfort of believing loved ones continue to protect family from beyond death. Your son, less interested in these feminine preparations, whittles a small piece of wood by firelight, shaping it with careful concentration. When asked what he's making, he shrugs. "Just practicing," but you notice the emerging form resembles a tiny sword, his mind still on the recent conflict and perhaps his future role in protecting the community. The evening deepens into full night. Outside, the sounds of the village grow quieter as people retreat to their homes, conserving precious fuel and seeking warmth against the intensifying cold. Only the occasional call of the watch, king's men and villagers still maintaining vigilance, breaks the silence. Your family prepares for sleep much as they do every night, yet with the awareness that tomorrow marks the year's darkest day, followed by the gradual return of light. It's a powerful symbol in your world, where winter darkness represents very real dangers of cold, hunger, and isolation. "Tell us a story, Father," your youngest requests as everyone settles onto the sleeping platform. "About Modronite from before." It's a familiar request. Children in your time learn through stories rather than writing, history and wisdom transmitted orally across generations. You consider which tale might be appropriate, settling on one your own father told you about the mothers, the female ancestors and protective spirits honoured at the solstice. Long ago, you begin, your voice dropping into the rhythmic cadence of storytelling. Before the Christ God came to our lands, our people knew that the darkest night of winter was when the veil between worlds grew thin. It was then that the mothers, those women of our blood who had passed beyond, could hear us most clearly and offer their protection through the dark months ahead. Your children listen raptly, even the older ones who've heard versions of this tale before. In a world without books or other entertainment, stories never grow truly old, especially when connected to imminent observances. On this night, women would gather at sacred places, groves, springs, ancient stones, to leave offerings and speak the names of those who came before. They would ask for fertility to return to the frozen earth, for safe passage through winter's dangers, for the sun's rebirth after its seeming death. You continue the tale, describing rituals only half remembered from your own childhood, practices that have evolved and blended with Christian teachings over generations. The fire cracks occasionally, punctuating your words, while outside the wind picks up, whistling around the house's corners and rattling the door in its frame. By the time you finish, your youngest is already asleep, her breathing deep and even. The others drift towards slumber as well, the story having done its work of transitioning them from day's activities to night's rest. You bank the fire carefully for the night, ensuring it will last until morning without needing attention. The proper management of fire is perhaps the most essential winter skill. Allowing it to die completely means difficult rekindling in the morning, while leaving it too vigorous wastes precious fuel and risks sparks. Sleep comes easier tonight than in recent days. The immediate danger has passed, your arm is healing, and tomorrow brings an observance that connects your family to both ancestors and community. Even in the depths of winter darkness, these threads of continuity provide comfort. Morning arrives with heavy grey skies promising snow. Your family rises to the familiar winter routine, rekindling the fire, breaking ice in the water bucket, preparing the simplest of breakfasts to conserve food. Yet there's an undercurrent of anticipation for the day's observances that lifts the usual winter lethargy. Your arm feels notably better, still painful when moved carelessly, but the worrying heat has faded completely. Your wife examines it with approval before applying a fresh poultice and bandage. "Good healing," she pronounces. "Keep it clean one more day and you can return to normal work tomorrow." Outside, the village has a different atmosphere than the frantic activity of recent days. People move with more measured pace, acknowledging the solstice with a certain solemnity. The king's men, somewhat bewildered by local customs, maintain their watches but interfere little with the day's preparations. The Thegn has declared a day of limited work. Only essential tasks will be performed, allowing for proper observance of both Christian prayers and older traditions. It's a practical decision as much as a spiritual one. Communities function better when allowed rhythms of rest and celebration, especially after crisis. Your son joins you for a morning circuit of the village, checking on neighbours and assessing ongoing repairs. The palisade is nearly restored, though still showing the scars of battle. Houses damaged by fire are being rebuilt, their owners temporarily sheltered with relatives, or in the Thegn's hall. The community's physical recovery progresses alongside its emotional healing. At midday, most villagers gather at the small wooden church where Father Ethelred leads prayers for protection through winter's remaining weeks. The service blends formal Latin liturgy with practical appeals in the common tongue, acknowledging both spiritual and material needs. The priest, himself a practical man, makes no mention of the evening's planned gathering at the sacred oak, though he surely knows of it. After church, the community shares what can only generously be called a feast, each family contributing what little they can spare to create a modest communal meal in the Thegns Hall. There's barley bread, some preserved meats, winter vegetables like turnips and onions, even a small amount of honey-sweetened porridge for the children. By summer standards, it would be poor fare indeed, but in midwinter, such shared abundance feels miraculous. The king's men join this meal, contributing portions of their own supplies. Their initial awkwardness among villagers has faded somewhat, replaced by the camaraderie that often develops between those who have faced danger together. They share stories of other settlements, other raids, other winters. Information-hungry villagers absorb eagerly, connecting their isolated experience to the wider world. As afternoon fades toward the year's earliest dusk, the women of the village begin to separate themselves, preparing for the traditional gathering at the sacred oak. It's women's business primarily, though some men will join later for certain observances. Your wife and daughters collect their prepared offerings: the cloth doll, some spun wool, a tiny portion of precious salt, a carved spindle whorl that your eldest has been working on for weeks. "We'll return after the first star appears," your wife tells you, an unnecessary reminder of the familiar ritual timing. To your son, "You'll come with the men later when the fire is lit." He nods, serious about his role in the proceedings. Though young, he's old enough to participate in the community rituals that mark life's passages and seasons. As darkness falls completely, earlier today than any other day of the year, you and your son join other village men walking toward the sacred oak at the settlement's edge. Each carries a small torch or lantern, creating a moving line of light against the winter darkness. The women's forms are already gathered around the ancient tree, their voices raised in songs older than Christianity in these lands. The ritual that follows blends elements from multiple spiritual traditions, pagan invocations to ancestors and fertility spirits alongside Christian prayers for protection and blessing. No one seems troubled by these contradictions. In your world, practical survival demands spiritual flexibility. No source of potential protection can be ignored when life balances so precariously between sustenance and starvation. Your family stands together as the community fire is lit, a special blaze built from wood gathered throughout the preceding year and saved specifically for this purpose. Its light pushes back the solstice darkness, symbolizing the sun's eventual return and the community's defiance of winter's death-dealing cold. The Then speaks briefly, acknowledging both the recent crisis and the ongoing challenge of winter. "We've faced raiders and driven them back," he reminds the gathered villagers. "Now we continue our battle against cold and hunger, as our ancestors did before us. Their strength lives in our blood, their wisdom guides our hands." Even Father Ethelred, standing somewhat apart from the most overtly pagan aspects of the gathering, nods approval at these words. The Christian priest understands his flock's need for continuity with past generations, especially in times of hardship. The ritual includes sharing of mead, the fermented honey drink reserved for special occasions, passed in a ceremonial cup first to the Thegn, then to other community leaders, and finally among all gathered adults. Each person takes a modest sip, the sweet potency warming throats and bellies against the bitter cold. When the cup reaches you, you drink and pass it to your son, his first time included in this adult observance, marking his transition from child to young man in the community's eyes. He accepts the cup solemnly, takes the smallest of sips, and passes it onward with careful dignity. The remaining ritual elements unfold in familiar sequence. Offerings placed at the oak's massive roots, names of ancestors spoken aloud in remembrance, traditional songs whose lyrics blend old gods and new faith in pragmatic harmony. Children too young to fully participate watch wide-eyed, absorbing the community's customs just as you did at their age. Eventually, the formal observances conclude, though the solstice fire will burn through the night, tended by volunteers in shifts. Families begin drifting back toward their homes, carrying small embers from the communal fire to rekindle their own hearths, a symbolic sharing of community strength. Your family walks together through the silent, snow-dusted village, the children unusually quiet, affected by the ritual's solemnity. At home, your wife uses the carried ember to light the fire, completing the symbolic connection between community and household. The remainder of the evening passes in peaceful reflection. There's little talk, each family member absorbed in their own thoughts while engaged in quiet activities, mending, whittling, carding wool. The ritual has provided a pause in winter's relentless struggle, a moment to consider larger patterns of life and death, darkness and light. Before sleep, your family gathers close to the fire for a final Modronite observance, speaking the names of female ancestors, particularly those who have passed recently. Your children recite grandmothers, great-grandmothers, aunts they've known or only heard about in stories. Each name connects your family to its past and, by extension, to its future. The continuing line that stretches beyond any individual life. As you settle onto the sleeping platform, arranged as always with children between adults for maximum warmth, you find yourself reflecting on winter's double nature in your world. It brings hardship almost beyond endurance, cold that kills, hunger that weakens, darkness that depresses spirits. Yet it also forces community coherence, cooperation, and careful planning that summer's abundance might allow to lapse. Your son shifts beside you, already half asleep. "Father," he murmurs, "when spring comes, will the raiders return?" The question hangs in the darkness, impossible to answer with certainty. "Perhaps," you reply honestly, "but we'll be ready, and stronger for what we've learned." He seems satisfied with this response, his breathing soon deepening into sleep. One by one, your family members drift off, wrapped in shared warmth against the solstice night, the year's longest darkness before the gradual return of light. Your own thoughts continue a while longer, reviewing recent events and future possibilities. The raid has changed your community in subtle ways beyond physical damage. There's greater vigilance now, but also greater cohesion. The successful defense, however narrow, has boosted confidence. The king's men have brought not just temporary protection, but knowledge that will remain after their departure. Winter continues, with weeks of cold and scarcity still ahead. Food stores must be carefully managed, fuel conserved, health maintained against the season's many threats. Your father's absence leaves a gap in family knowledge and labour that must be compensated for. Your arm, though healing, reminds you of mortality's constant proximity. Yet, as sleep finally approaches, your predominant feeling is not fear, but a qualified hope. Your family surrounds you, alive and whole. Your home stands secure. The community has faced crisis and survived. The winter solstice marks the point after which daylight, however gradually, begins to increase. In Dark Age Britain, such modest victories constitute real success, not the elimination of hardship, which is impossible, but the development of resilience to endure it. Each winter survived becomes part of community wisdom, strengthening future generations against similar challenges. Your consciousness begins to fade, the familiar sounds of your sleeping family creating a peaceful backdrop to approaching dreams. Outside, the solstice night reaches its midpoint, the darkness as complete as it will ever be, yet already containing the promise of returning light. And so winter continues in your small corner of a world emerging from its darkest age, difficult, dangerous, demanding everything from those who would survive it, yet also punctuated by moments of beauty, community, and primitive comfort that make the struggle worthwhile. As you drift into sleep, one final thought surfaces, that perhaps, someday, your descendants will live in a world where winter brings inconvenience rather than mortal peril, where homes are warm regardless of outside temperature, where food remains plentiful through all seasons, where raiders are historical curiosities rather than immediate threats. It seems impossible, yet the world has changed before. The Romans came and went. Christianity replaced older gods. Knowledge is lost and found again. Perhaps a future exists where the brutal reality of Dark Age winter becomes simply a story told for entertainment. Exotic, distant, fascinating, precisely because it no longer threatens. Such thoughts dissolve as sleep claims you completely, your body relaxing into the simple animal comfort of warmth and family on the year's longest night. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, more repairs, continued vigilance, the endless work of winter survival. But for now, rest comes easily, carrying you away from consciousness into dreams of spring's eventual, inevitable return.